We got one little piece left, that is finance.
Okay.
You
Can
ain't
go to the right folder here.
I never will, Brent. I'll never understand how you know all them folders.
Just gotta know which one to go to. Okay. I will be as quick as possible with this. The agenda items, you can see there are about 8 items, but we will be quick with them. So the standard general federal fund, we'll have a dietary fund overview. We do have a copier consolidation proposal to submit to you. CTE Shopbot Tools, that is something that Crystal Fink will share. And then the official technology request for the $640,000 the county's been giving us each year. And then the school bus request. This will be just approval to go for action to the board meeting so that Mr. Boyd can officially go to the county and ask for that for next year. And then clerk to the board, that's something just real simple, just to clean up from an auditing perspective on the financial side. So looks like a lot, but it's really, will be pretty quick, I believe. Okay. I'm just going to start with, just hit the highlights here of this revenue analysis for March. The 30-second overview on this, you can see property tax. This is timing, came in 300,000 better than last March. Sales tax, now, and that's just a timing, so that's not an actual increase in budget year, but this is the sales tax. The sales tax just continues to exceed expectations. $251,000 better than last March on sales tax this month, so that is a true net increase. The community service fees, the reason we're seeing such an increase there, 97,000 over last year. Of course, COVID started to hit last year, but that's still well over 2.5 times what we normally get, and we are getting catch up from the state, as Cindy Hayes has explained to me, and that's going to continue, we think, possibly up through September. So that's budgeted in with next year's budget in a projected increase for maybe 3 months of the next year's budget. But we do expect that to fall to normal levels once the next school year starts. And Cindy can explain details if there's any questions there. The BEP, 159,000 over last March. Part of that, approximately 67,000 of that, was the state supplemental funds for the certified staff bonus. They were sending that over 5 BEP payments. So part of that's embedded in there. About 90,000 of that was an actual increase from the prior year in dollar amount. But all in all, for the month, 691,000 better than budget from those 3 items mainly than last March. Year to date, you can see we're $2 million better on revenues than we were last March at this same time. That's kind of your high level 30-second overview on that, unless anybody has any other questions.
That was great, Brad.
Just a quick comment, just so for the boards, you know, we budgeted at 95% on the property tax collection, and so we're a little bit, you know, we're only at 98% collected. The trustee told me today that he's at 96%. So we will end up ahead of budget on our property taxes.
That'll be good. Only 207,000 to go to meet budget. That has been consistent with the last 3 months of prior years. So that's good news, Mitch. If we exceed it this year, we were a little under last year.
Trustee's been aggressive.
Very good.
Mike's got a question.
So that 2 million, we're that far ahead of our budget?
No, that's better than last year's
Okay.
revenue at this same
Where
time.
are we at on budget right now?
So budgeted revenue, I may need to go to another sheet to tell you that, because this just gives the year-to-date revenue. And the reason that revenue is not necessarily budgeted monthly, because property tax, for example, doesn't come in evenly. You'll get 2 big hits a year of like $4 million. So, but, excuse me, let me move over here. If we put the percentage in there, yes. So right now we're at 82% collection. this is just through March, so we're only 75% through the year. That means we're 7% ahead
Right,
of
that's-
being on track,
okay.
if you want to put it in terms
Yes,
of monthly,
that's-
that way, yeah. Now, I could break it down dollar amount on that.
I was just curious.
But yeah. Yeah, and the big thing's sales tax. I mean, that's one of the big ones there. Okay, and it skews it a little with property tax, because we only got 200,000, we're 98% collected, and it's only 9 months in, so that'll skew it a little bit too, because that won't continue the last 3 months at that rate. All right, any other questions before we move forward? We
Press
won't
on.
we won't really spend much time here, and especially have to blow that up. I've already stated this is just tracking the sales tax, 251,000 better than last month. Look at this line here, every month so far this year. And this will also tell you, compared to last year, we're 1.1 million ahead of last year at this same time there. So that's going to, this line right here, 15,683, that's the budgeted amount. We didn't raise that budget amount last year. We are tracking, you'll see in the new budget proposal today, at 17.1 million is what we're tracking. Well, it's what we've really gotten the last 12 months. So that's going to be my recommendation to you, to put 17.1 million on the budget for sales tax, because that's not a projection. That's real collections in the last 12 months. So we will continue to go to the next document. Okay, this is just a recap. I won't re-go over this with the revenue, because we just really looked at it, but 691 better than last March. Those are the items we've already discussed, so I won't go into that. Just the highlights here. The university payment was higher on the books in March because it's for February's total, where we get about a 4 million property tax hit. So it makes the university share obviously higher on that month too. I'll just, for the sake of time, skip ahead here to the main items or any significant items. This is an IXL renewal there. And as far as expenses go, you can see most of these are normal ones, small ones that we go over each month. And down to the summary. So $5,597,000 is our expense for March, compared to $5,796,000 March of last year. So we actually came in $199,000 less. Now there's three major items that caused that, and I'll sum them up right here. So first, we did have an additional expense in March of this year compared to March of last year of $340,000 approximately. That was the state supplement for the bonus for the certified staff. That hit the books. But we have two other things that are credits. The remote technology grant was actually a credit, a deduction to the general fund grant. That was where all of the Chromebooks that have been purchased, the state had that federal grant, and that basically we got $246,000, almost $247,000. Look at it as a refund or reimbursement, and the way the auditors instructed me to book this for the books is we booked the expense on the federal projects once that was approved, and miscellaneous refund, the actual line that it came out of on the general fund. So that hit as a credit deduction for the expenses in the month of March. The other thing, as you as the board approved the ESSER 2 grant in the meeting, part of that was $307,000 that was for COVID-related expenses. That grant allowed us to get reimbursed for since March of last year. That $307,000 was also refunded or credited to the general fund. So it was interesting. We had $340,000 in new expenses, but we had $554,000 in credits. None of those three items were normal last March. When you pull all that out, we're within about $50,000 of expenses last March, which when you're talking 5.7 million and you're within 50 grand, you're dead on. So that's just an overall summary of the expenses. If no more questions, I'll move forward. I probably, unless you all want me to go over the payables report, I probably will skip that unless there's questions, and the expense report and balance sheet, and just move on unless anybody has an objection.
Move on.
per the chairman, I'm moving up. For federal projects, the one thing that I will show you is this is the largest payables expense we've ever had since I've been here on federal projects. And I clicked on the wrong document, excuse me. The reason is those two large grants that I just told you about, 554, well, the expense hits the federal projects. So that 554,000 approximately that I told you is right here. The remote tech grant and then these refunds here, these big items were from the ESSER 2 reimbursement. So that's why it makes the federal projects $650,000 on the payables report, transferring that money back to the general fund. As far as other items here, it's pretty standard. I have a note. If you want to go through any of these in detail, I can pull up another document with notes on it. But your all's preference if you want me to do that at this point. Mr. Chairman, what is your desire?
Nobody, no.
Okay.
Nobody got anything?
That is, we'll leave it there with the federal projects then. Everything's standard, no surprises. So with no objections, we'll just move that to action items if you choose to do that, or if the board chooses to do that. Okay. We'll now jump to the Dietary Fund overview.
Now, are you gonna give her a list of what to put action, or do we need to?
I can do that. We
Okay.
can follow the actual title
Okay.
of the agenda. So with that, and this analysis, and we'll get to it in budget, certainly will change at the end of this year, where when we talk in budget, the expenses we're moving to dietary for FY22, it won't be apples to apples. So I'll continue to track it like this through June, and then we'll come up with more of like the revenue analysis I showed you, I'll probably come up with more of a report like that to bring to the board. But all in all, expenses and revenue, I'll go down to the fund balance. So it's just for the sake of time, you can see the revenue line comparison, the expense comparison. So basically, the one thing I'll point out is expenses has went down compared to last year at this same time by 224,000. Revenues went down by 361 same time last year. And that's just COVID effects. It's not a normal school year still. And so there's the lines brought together, 42,000 deficit, you could say, so far this year. This is the fund balance coming in still at 1.431, dropped a little with the deficit this month. But still, you can see if you go back to when this is tracked 4 years prior, apples to apples, comparing it the same way, it was 94,000 negative compared to 1.4 million positive now, using the same benchmark. So just a tremendous improvement. Can't ask for better than that, really. Any other questions on dietary before we move forward?
Well, for next year, USDA is gonna, they're paying for everything. Is that how it's gonna be? They reimbursing
For one breakfast and one lunch per child.
for the whole school year? Okay.
For next year too.
Well, that's what I say, it's all next year.
Okay, so now we'll get into the copiers that I had mentioned to you, an option that's available to us. And this is a copier consolidation of several places in our system. Central office, Midway, and Asbury. We're currently under a RICO lease getting ready to expire for those. And then we're actually able to include 2 schools that have availability right now, Jonesboro Elementary and Fall Branch, at deeply discounted rates. So this is actually through R.J. Young. R.J. Young they got the bid from Nashville Metro Public Schools, large contract. We're able to piggyback off of that bid and get the same pricing, which is actually, it appears even more attractive than the state, but these copiers give us even more capability. This figure that you see here, this is an estimated annual cost savings in combining just these Midway Center. There's a big teacher center there. These copiers are actually going to have more capability, both be online. Right now they have one copier that's not necessarily connected where they have to print on one and go copy on another. That's going to be done away with. But again, it's just more capacity and capability. There has been continuous problems, I'm told by some down there, with repairs. So the central office room upstairs with 2 copiers, and the accounting office, actually that gets thrown in here as part of this as well, where we have a copier down there, and then Asbury to there. Just with these, without getting into the nuts and bolts, projected savings is nearly $6,000 just on the monthly expense, not counting that toners and ink cartridges are included with this. So there will undoubtedly be even more savings than that, but that's what we can actually guarantee with the actual monthly fee. This is before we get to the schools. The other part of this is R.J. Young will take care of shipping the Rico copiers back for us. There is a small buyout on those Rico copiers that R.J. Young is fully funding, so it will not cost us a dime for the remaining payments on that. They will cut a check to cover that and take care of all installation. So for this, this just seems like a tremendous opportunity. Now for the schools, Fall Branch, the estimated savings here, this is not counting toner savings, ink toner savings, estimated at over $1,300 per year. That's big for a school on a small budget. It really is, especially when there's challenges fundraising as well.
Are they, let me ask you, Brad, are there a way that we could absorb these prices of these copiers into our budget?
So that's interesting, because Mr. Boyd was just talking, we were just having a conversation about that just the other day. This is a step to really doing that, because
Well, I know we've been wanting to
Yeah.
get the copiers on the same page
Yeah.
in the schools, but
Yeah.
I want to be able to let that price of that money for the schools, let us take care of the payment of the copiers. And let the school have that money. Are there a chance that we could do something like that? What kind of money would that cost us to do something like that? If we absorbed all the copier expense into our budget, and the school has that money to help more operate out there.
Well, what's the, like right there is $1,300 savings, what's the actual cost?
right here, 306.74. It's up to 20,000 pages, which in this case at Fall Branch, that's plenty. Now the high schools, that wouldn't be enough, obviously. But we would have to do a study. What has been happening is over the last few years is we've been migrating those leases to the state contract, because at the time state had unlimited copying. They went away from that. With R.J. Young getting that Nashville Metro bid like they did, it's more attractive. So this is also a way to systematically start picking that up if we can still get under this Nashville Metro bid as well. As far as an overall cost, it'd probably take me till tomorrow to know that, what an actual full cost system-wide would be. And there's some variable depending on how many copiers, how many copies are used each month. Each school would have different needs, of course. For example, this 20,000 pages at Fall Branch, the high schools, if memory serves me correct from a few years ago, they might do 100,000 copies, sometimes in a month.
Well, that's just, I mean, that was just
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
I think that's a great
a
idea.
But-
budget.
Yeah, that was something Mr. Boyd had even asked me
That's
about
wonderful,
here just
because
a few days
They
ago.
have to spend so much
Yep.
time and effort fundraising to
Mhm.
get money for their copiers.
Correct.
Well, in my conversations, as I've done the site visits with schools, with principals, that's an area that I would like to, find a solution. We can come to a standard that we believe, maybe by size of school or grade levels, we come to a standard that we assume the cost, and provide them with the copiers. And then there's also, in that conversation about fundraising that schools have had to do for those kinds of services, there's also phone services I'd like to explore, that we come to an agreement that we provide those essential services, and they do not have to fundraise to supplement those services. They can, they're gonna fundraise, but they need to focus that on how they're gonna enhance the school environment and the classroom instruction. And other services besides what should be district-supported services. So maybe not this year's budget, but as we work through the next next year's budget, I would like to work in that direction.
And with the Jonesboro Elementary School, they actually are able to add a copier there, what they call BOGO, which is no charge. And it's just part of this program. So, and actually with Jonesboro Elementary, it's interesting, it's 1,000 a year savings projected, not counting ink cartridges and toners that they're going to save, but they're actually outsourcing their color, going to, is it Kinko's or Staples? Staples in Johnson City, outsourcing that, so 15, 25 cents a page. Am I remembering correctly, we're estimating 5 cents a page to do that now, so significant savings even outside this monthly. So the action item we need tonight, or we're requesting, is that the board, this was a 5-year agreement under the National Metro, piggybacking off that bid, so the statute allows us to do that, but it would take board approval to maybe put it on an action item, pending review of the final contract with Director Boyd and Attorney Bennett. But that would be what we would be asking for tonight.
Mr. Flander's got a question.
I got 2 questions, actually.
Oh,
One of them, one of them is, with it being a 5-year plan, and Jonesboro Elementary won't, you know, we should be confined to Jonesboro Middle and Jonesboro Elementary. What happens then? Is there some flexibility to where we're not stuck with?
Well, you would transfer it to the new school, and at that time, maybe we would have also picked up the middle school and you just roll the copiers in there.
So we need all 4 still, or if they hit 2 apiece?
Well, it would be, let me ask you that. Let's say that you have 4 copiers, 2 at each school, and they get to the new school and only need 3. What would happen then? This gentleman is Mr. Cazell with R.J. Young, by the way.
Yeah, we do our own financing, so most of the folks in this industry outsource that financing, so that gives us a lot more flexibility. So if that happened, you know, we have a non-appropriations funding clause on every agreement, so we would just be able to take one away and credit you for the difference if that was the case, or we could find another place for it in another school, whatever may apply.
And why is there 3 at Midway? Are we still having a lot of people where to make copies and travel back to schools?
It's a large teacher center there. Now, Ms. Hayes might be able to speak a little more. The Midway Teacher Center on the copiers, I don't know what all that's used for. I just know it's a big teacher center over there.
Yes, sir. The teacher center, it's open up to all schools, and that helps kind of take some of the pressure off of funding copiers and copier paper to individual schools. They go once a week and make all their copies there. In the past, when we had a lot of paper tests, paper resources, there's 2 women that worked there that made all those copies, which made a lot of copies. So anything the schools needed in the entire district, paper copies, they could send it there to have them copied, and they support us at the district level in anything that we need to get out, anything from bulletins, you know, flyers, test copies, that's what they do there.
With the buy one, get one, though, would we be better to get a freebie at the school versus having those still in Midway for people to have to go back and forth to?
Well,
I'm
the
just
difference
asking,
with
I don't-
Midway is it's a mass volume of copies, and that's a lot of wear and tear on the smaller ones at the schools. The ones at Midway are made to perform quickly, fast, you know, when you're looking at copying 5,000 pages of something, you want it.
Okay. See, I was looking at some on there, and I thought it was that schools were getting the same ones as Midway.
No, it's more commercial at Midway, that I do know. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Mr.
Midway
Cazell?
does about 15 to 20 times more volume a month than any of the school type machines would, so they're considered light production machines, whereas like up in the workroom, those are just general office machines.
Mr. Masters.
Are we working towards, at some point, all the system under this umbrella?
That would be, at this point, a very good goal to have. At first, when the state had unlimited papers, we were kind of migrating there, but of course, these copiers are on a different level, especially those Midway. So that kind of would be certainly a goal to work towards.
I guess my only
believe.
question is, if we're saving that kind of money in our smaller schools, wouldn't we save 3 times that amount at, say, the high schools?
They're under the state contract, so we would have to actually examine the current spend. These were not.
Okay.
These schools were not. So it's going to
So
be a
we're
little
under a different contract.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
I'll
the-
add too, Brad, if you don't mind, there's at least 5, I think I saw on your list that we talked about that could be targeted next, that the contracts are either up or almost up. So you're probably looking at 1,000 plus per year savings for each of those schools, but as you get to think, you know, like high schools, then yes, you're gonna see 2 or 3 times more savings. Yep.
We just have to analyze that and compare it. Yeah,
Ultimately, that's the goal.
That's what I figured.
but we feel this is a great step in going towards that. But if no objection, you okay to?
Yep.
That'll go, okay. Great, so that'll be for next Tuesday's board meeting. Next is CTE, and we have, Carol, do I need to, there's a link that Jennifer put on BOE to, do I need to sign on to BOE and click that link? Is that what I need to do? Crystal Fink wanted us to pull it up, but this is a,
Just give us a quick overview and the cost. I think that'll.
sure, the cost on this, it says CNC Router with attachments. It's a sole source provider. This is CTE, out of the CTE funds already approved in the budget. You can see $39,140. This is the quote on ShopBot, and this just gives a description of what this item is.
Where's this
I
guy?
won't read that. I'm sorry.
Where's this guy?
It's going to Mark Good, the residential
Says
and
David
construction program study at David Crockett.
Yeah. So as far as the details what this machine does, I'd have to have you say that if there's any questions.
Okay. CNC stands for Computer Numerical Control. So basically what this machine does, it has an additional piece of software that would be separate from this quote. I have funding for that as well. You put a digitalized program, it's called G-code, and then the machine, it would take that digital code and then automate it into controlling what the machine does. So for construction, they could make, you know, like if you have a cabinet door, the really nice patterns in a cabinet door, they could take a picture of your face and put it on a piece of wood. It would digitalize, burn that into the wood. So there's many connections to our standards. You are in the Battle for Your Future through the Tennessee Home Builders Association, so this is something that they could make intricate pieces for their project. And this router is all wood. There are some CNC routers that will do metal, but this one is just for wood since that's the program study he's on. So they can make multiple things for fundraisers. So does that kind of explain what it does? It's a really neat piece of equipment. And this technology that this uses, there are multiple industries, the medical industry, marine, the military, they all use this specific type of technology where you put in the digital and then it fabricates a product from the digital imagery.
Okay. Mr. Fleener?
That's not taken out of what we had left over. We already spent all everything we had for the CTE.
So I was allotted a certain amount of money at the beginning of the year, and then, you know, the board gave us the extra. This comes out of that same pot, so I had money still left after the $250,000.
Anybody else?
And it's just because it's over 10,000 that we're requesting board approval. Yeah, the money's already there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
They ain't asked.
Crystal, are there anything that, like that piece of equipment that can be put in at Daniel Boone? And Mr.
Jerry
Brewer's-
already has one that's not
Jerry
as,
has one?
it's not as big. His is a smaller one. He's had it for a little while, but they do have a little bit of that, the technology. His program of study is different. He does structural systems where Mark is residential and construction. It's still under the same career cluster, but their course content and standards are a little different. But Jerry does have one, it's just a smaller scale.
All right.
All right, moving on.
Okay. Next, we'll go to the technology request. Oh, I'm sorry. the technology request. This is just standard yearly, just to go as an action item for Mr. Boyd to formally request the $640 for FY22 from the county. That's all this is. And Mr. Fulbright said these devices will be used to replace the same approximate number of Chromebooks due to age out of June 2021.
Okay.
Curtis, what we do with the old ones?
We're gonna have them recycled.
I'm just curious. I
We've
didn't know.
got several vendors that have expressed interest in coming in, picking up our own equipment.
When we were virtual, I know we gave them to pre-K and kindergarten, do they still use them, or?
They use them at schools, my understanding. I
Oh,
don't
they
think
do?
they're
Okay.
So much like particularly the younger folks.
They take them home still?
No,
They
not the
don't?
younger ones.
Okay, that's what I wondered.
Do they do, you will come back and we will need to designate them as surplus, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that Tennessee grant help on any of them purchases?
We are,
They give us so much money per Chromebook, you remember we bought?
right, and I believe, no, this is, we're asking this from the county. If you'll recall, a couple months ago, I'd asked about using those funds to put equipment up in the ceilings.
Right, but I wondered if we were getting some money back per Chromebook on this as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've not heard of another opportunity to do that from the state.
Are they a lease program on Chromebooks?
No.
No kind of lease opportunity thing that we could turn them back in 5 years or 3 years or whatever when they get outdated? And
I'm sure there's some out there. I haven't seen any more.
I don't think anybody want them, would they?
well,
For
you-
Chromebooks, just because of their low cost, you know, a lease purchase is generally not an idea, because at the end of that 3-year, 4-year period, they're worth
nothing.
relatively nothing. You know, the lease purchases are usually the higher end computers, so that when you turn those back in, if you turn them back in, the companies can then repurpose them and make a profit off of them. So they hold their value. Chromebooks are used until they're not useful anymore.
Well, I just,
All right.
Okay. Next is just on the agenda is so Mr. Boyd can go to the county and request school buses for the FY22 year. There are 8 propane buses being requested at $744,000. Number of minibuses, a standard one, 2 of them at 65, and then 1 with a wheelchair, so $946,000 would be the total request that Mr. Boyd would be going to the county to ask for.
Okay.
And if no other questions, we'll go to the last item.
do you want to hear my request or wait till Tuesday night?
You can share it now if you'd like.
I'd like to share it.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to not purchase propane buses till we find out actually how long they're gonna last. I think we've got enough in the fleet to see how long they're gonna last before we purchase any more. And another concern is when we're taking school buses and going away from here, where are they gonna get fuel at? I'm gonna run a brand new propane bus to Knoxville or to the other side or wherever, and I can't get no fuel down there? Or, you know, I mean, that concerns me.
Well, I mean, it would be my understanding the intention is not to convert 100% of the fleet to propane. So
Well,
for long haul trips, we probably would still need to use diesel or gasoline, but local trips, and what I understand after speaking with Tony, you know, there's fewer moving parts, so there's less, you know, potentially less maintenance on these propane buses.
but we
But
don't
we
know
use them
that.
for local. Well, I think there, you know, we probably, if we have not done that, we can certainly seek out districts that have used propane buses for many years and probably have a really good idea about their longevity. But I believe that's probably been in the conversation.
We've had all these conversations
Yeah.
about 3
Well,
times.
I'm the
just-
one that complains about it, so I'd
Every
like
time.
to.
I think the mechanics feel like there's fewer moving parts, some of these diesels, especially with the modifications that have been made. A lot of electronics, those are what causes the major problems and requires the most maintenance and effort. With the propane buses, those are not, that's not a maintenance issue for them. So it's just a lower cost maintenance for these propane buses. And if we keep them local routes, then those long haul, going to Knoxville
So-
is not gonna be a consideration.
All the buses is gonna have to come back to the bus garage that we've got and fill up with propane. Because we only have one place to fill up with
Keith, honey,
propane.
we've talked about this 3 different
We just
meetings.
said we're gonna buy a
I
programmer,
understand.
and where are we gonna,
But
we're gonna have it
we've-
at one place?
We've done this 3 times already at least.
I understand it,
Well,
but
then
that's why
Why
I'm
do
keep
you
saying,
keep asking?
because I don't think we need to purchase all propane
We're-
buses.
we're
Now, I would
not.
support buying 4 and go 4 diesels. That way we've got 4 diesels that can go on the long trips.
Well, that's simple.
It's
Yes,
actually increased. We went from 0 to 4.
that is positive, no. Well, how about we put it on the agenda and vote on it, and then you vote for 4, and everybody else vote for what they want to, and we can move on. I mean,
I'll support that.
I will, if you do, where Keith's going is, if you look at the years roll and the buses that you have that are eligible to be used, I don't know what your master plan is to be able to keep these long haul buses in place if you can't use propane to take kids to Nashville.
Right.
Okay, so, you may need to wanna look and see how you do that each year, so you don't back yourself into a corner in 12 years.
and I didn't want, oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I didn't want to bring it up today, but on top of that, you may want to look here in about 5 years at going all electric.
Well, that was what I was
Because
gonna
if
say.
everybody in the country is turning everything into electric, then there's a pretty good chance we're going to have more electric buses. So I think it's a little premature to argue
How
about
many electric
gas
we
and
get? Any
propane.
idea yet?
We're getting one.
Mr. Fleener.
Now, Tony said last time he was here that you can, it's like truck stops that sell propane buses, no matter where you go, it does take a little bit of pre-planning, but there are several stops between here, like Nashville. And he even said that they could get to Knoxville and back and wouldn't have to stop,
Yeah.
or something like that. It was Crossville or something like that. It was, so,
Yeah, I'm not sure the range, but I'm sure there's range and there are stations.
Knoxville back, for sure.
But a good diverse fleet
I-
is a good idea.
I promise you, I don't know a lot of things, but I do know trucks and motors, and I eat that stuff up. You will not get a propane vehicle or a gas vehicle run as long as a diesel will. I'm sorry, it will not. So,
How
I
many-
bring it up every time because I'm going to bring
Let me
it up
ask you a
every
question.
time.
Since you know, how many propane vehicles do you have?
I
How do you
don't
know
have
that?
none, but I know what a propane vehicle is. It's a gas vehicle.
But you know
That's
that it
been
won't
switched
last
over.
as long as a diesel.
A gas
But you
vehicle
don't
will
have
not
one.
last as long as a diesel vehicle.
Okay. All right, let's move on.
Okay.
Thank you.
The last item on here is actually something that's not new as far as what's been happening for many years. This is really to cover ourselves in payroll audit potentially, and this has to do with the clerk to the board, the extra hours that are worked. The board years ago were told approved whatever the comparable hourly rate of pay of whoever the clerk to the board is to be paid for hours worked. Problem is, we can't find any documentation nowhere. It's been looked at for a year. Can't find it anywhere. So this is the motion that's recommended. I make a motion that the clerk to the board be paid his or her comparable hourly rate of pay for any time spent fulfilling the duties of clerk to the board. This motion is effective starting in FY21. This is nothing new whatsoever. It is just to cover ourselves in the form of a payroll audit.
Is that something that should be in policy though?
It's finance, it's paying it, so that's up to you. I guess that's up to the board, that's not my
Remember
decision, I
with
guess.
Stipends and everything else, is this I agree with you that it needs to be there, I'm just wondering where's the right place to stick it. You just make a motion and do it and document it in your minutes, or
Yep.
just stick it in your policy?
For auditors, they would just, either one for auditors, I mean, as long as we
Right,
can
I
produce the board
understand that,
minutes, they're fine with that, or you could do whatever.
I don't know that it should be policy. I mean, it certainly is practice and guided by, you know, the direction of the auditors, but I don't think it should be a policy.
Okay, so we need that as a motion on the agenda.
Yes,
Action.
Action.
action item.
Okay.
That's all finance, ain't
Oh, so,
it?
well, well then, let's,
Start the regular.
meeting's adjourned.
Call session.
Okay.
We can go home now.
Wait a minute, I got one more thing.
Hey, she needs 5 minutes.
Again?
Yep.
Shit.
Walk over. Right?
We're stopping over?
Yep.
Oh, all this was the other meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just hit it, I didn't say nothing, so.
No, I mean, we can just leave the stream going because we'll have another one in the future. Like I only had 2 meetings and we'll do. Or we'll just keep this one going.
Whatever you say. Okay, may I? Okay, I'd like to call this meeting, Washington County Board of Education meeting to order. And we have Brad Hale.
Am I good?
Certainly, a lot of work has gone into building fiscal year 22 budget to this point. You know, I'm happy to be a part of it and look forward to having the chance to go to the county commission. But at this point, you know, Brad certainly has the most knowledge, so he's going to walk us through, you know, all of the previous discussions and things that are incorporated in our proposed budget, and then he'll also share what that looks like.
Can I say one thing? You've obviously spent time on this. Do you want to make comments on it now or later, or I
No.
know it all of your opinion?
Certainly, there's some things as far as highlighting and things that I've asked Brad to incorporate. He already has. I just asked him to add a few things. You know, one item that I asked, you know, that we at least consider is seriously looking at the salary and wage increases, the raises. And I asked him to add a column for, he's included a 1%, 2%, 3%. I've asked him to also include what a 4% looks like.
Okay.
Is that system-wide?
Yes, it's all positions, you know, all employees, certified, non-certified, 4%, up to a 4% across the board raise. We just want to see what the numbers look like. And as far as any opinion I have, I think in looking at all of the items, you know, there's going to be decisions made, but I think we keep that as a top priority.
Above all.
I believe so.
Okay.
I just realized I can use this mouse, can't I?
You need help, Brad?
Yeah, I'm gonna use this mouse. I just unplugged it from that one. This will be much faster. Thank you. Good. Okay, so just a quick overview of the format and the way we need to, we're gonna go, this is the order we need to go through the budgets. First will be federal projects. That one I feel will be probably pretty quick and not a lot of discussion needed. Then we'll discuss Dietary Fund, then get into the general fund, and we'll finish up the night, hopefully not too late. So first with federal projects, let me pull up the grants that we do have now, as far as what we know at the moment, and federal projects right here. So we have the details, number one, and Jennifer, by the way, is going to get some papers that were left upstairs for each one of you to have. So she'll be back down here in just a moment. She'll have this packet that Mr. Day has here. And so these are the federal, and it'll be within the packet that Jennifer is handing out right now. This will not be on page 1, but you can find this document within that packet. And these are the grants that right now are already loaded in E-Plan with allocations. Now they wouldn't include carryover dollars. That won't be known until the year is closed out and we know the amounts that will actually be carried forward. So right now, in here you can see these grants, it totals $4 million, and that's in line with normal, about the normal amount with the grants. This wouldn't include the ESSER grants that are out there right now, and some of the new, the other grants that could be coming. So We have details in each one of these grants that I can pull up if we want to see the details, but this gives you the actual dollar amount right now that's in E-Plan with the narratives. So the way you have done the federal grants in the past is you would approve them and all subsequent amendments, which means as the amounts, whatever the Tennessee Department of Education allocates us, and of course, any grants, any new grants, we would of course would still bring for your approval as they become available. But all the grants are not loaded yet for next year, just based on the time. And, how would you like to get into further discussion on the federal projects grants? This is the summary. These are the amounts we have right now. And so I'll let the board kind of take it from here and how you would like to proceed. Any one of these, we have detailed documentation that I can pull up. But
Anybody?
I just say I recommend it as it's been created,
Right.
just for my 2 cents opinion.
I really can't see how we can do anything till we get the BEP back.
this is separate. This is federal projects.
Yeah, but still part of the budget.
Yeah, this is the 142 federal project, so this is not affected by BEP. This
It's not
particular
any
one.
local money.
Yeah.
But this is part we have to have to the commission level first.
Right, the county commission has approved it, and basically the verbiage, Mitch, correct me, is the way the commission's done that is the budget is what the TDOE says, allocates, which means as we get changes in allocation, sometimes monthly, we don't have to run it back down to the commission. They approve it one time per year, and the rest of it is all handled in-house, here.
Well, I would add to that and say, isn't that what the board decided to do
Yes.
locally?
Yes.
Because when we had ESSER II money coming on, if it was approved by the state, then the board really had no say in how that ESSER II money was used. Until it made it a point to
Right.
prioritize.
Right, and how you would do it in-house is just simply add for in-house purposes as any new grant does come before the board for approval throughout the year. That's different than an allocation change of an existing grant.
I would agree. Is there anything that Jerry would like to speak to? Since Mr. Boyd, is there anything that Jerry would like to speak to in terms of any changes in federal programs next year that we maybe need to be concerned about? And one of the things that I want to kind of touch on is that I can remember several years ago we had, and it may have been, I don't remember the federal program because I wasn't focused in on the schools, but we had a bunch of guidance counselors that were being federally funded, and that federal funding went away, or maybe the ARRA money or something. And so then you had to pick those folks up in your general purpose school fund. So just, is there anything similar to that? Are we creating any new programs that are of any significance?
For our program, everything's fairly about the same as it was last year. As far as people goes, what you're asking is, it's fairly about the same as we had last year. If you look at the overall budget, we received an increase of about 3.69% of the whole, when you're talking about, IDA, Title I, all those things. So just not a lot of change.
Okay.
Brad? Is this where we would, and it may already be in it, but where we would like to add 2 new SPED teachers? Is that in this part?
That was under, we had that on the general budget.
Right, but would it come out of this budget or no?
No, the general budget would be the 141 fund. This is all 142
Okay.
funds. So
But
that's,
SPEDs, no SPEDs took out of this?
well, yes, the IDEA grants are SPED grants. They are included in the 142 fund. And we had, at the end, right here, when you go all the way to the right side, there's 2 IDEA grants. The Part B is a large one. right now 1.9 million. And there will be some carryover, so once the year-end close happens and we close those grants out, let's say there's $200,000 there. That would carry over and be added with an allocation change next year. An IDEA preschool. Now, Dr. Myers could probably give us details as far as what's in those grants if you wanted to know that.
I think, well, Whitney and I both would like to, see the 2 new teachers if we could. I didn't know if it'd be in this part or in the general part.
It's typically
It's
in
funded.
general. Did you want to say something, Dr. Myers? Or?
Once we put in the staff that we currently have, what's funded out of IDA is mainly instructional assistants. There are 2 teacher positions and a speech language position in this allocation. There's not enough funding to add 2 teacher positions in this grant without cutting something.
But we do have that on the general fund. Yeah, we do. All right, any other questions?
No, sir. That's good.
Motions to approve?
Yeah,
to send
roll,
to
motions,
commission.
roll call votes.
So moved if you need it.
Second,
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call vote, Jennifer?
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin? Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
1 out of 3 down, that's not bad.
Not bad, not bad, doing well.
Next, we will go into the Dietary Fund. And there's a few things we have to decide with the Dietary Fund budget this year before we can get to the general budget. And so, as you know, the board voted to move the full health insurance expense and dietary director expense, all the expense out of the general budget of dietary to the actual Dietary Fund 143. So we have to establish a couple of things, again, before we get to the general budget. The number one thing we have to do first is we need to establish a minimum fund balance that the board wants the dietary to not go below, because we know that with the insurance expense, the director expense, we're roughly moving $600,000 in new expense to the Dietary Fund. They won't be able to sustain that over a period of time, even though they've done very well these last few years. That's just more expense than their capacity is to handle. So it's not a question of if, it's when they run too low on fund balance or run out. So Caitlin and I had reached out and had some communication with some of the state folks for an estimate. What would be a healthy fund balance, and the estimates seem to come back about a month and a half of expenses would be good. So roughly, let's just say 500,000 if we round up or so. But that's up to the board and what you all said. And what happens is if the dietary drops below that, the general fund has to kick in and take it back to that level, which means we will have to budget money in the general fund for that purpose. Might not have to this year for that purpose, as long as the capital needs requested, whatever the board approves for dietary is handled out of the general fund. But the Dietary Fund, let's say, I'm just going to throw 500,000 out there just for the purpose of this argument. So roughly they have about, we said 1.24 million right now. Let's say they come in somewhere between that 1.2 and 1.4 million mark at the end of this year. You establish a $500,000 minimum fund balance, so there's about 700,000 left there. We've added 600,000 in new expense. That pretty much takes it up. So there's no capacity to purchase the capital equipment out of the Dietary Fund when you consider these factors. So we're going to have to budget whatever the board would approve out of the general fund, unless it's picked up by ESSER, which is a chance it could be picked up by ESSER 3. I think you wanted to say something, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think it's probably a bad idea. I liked it at first, but after we talked about it, it doesn't make any sense, because we're gonna take all this out, and then we're gonna constantly have to come back and add money back to it, because he's sitting here telling us it ain't gonna fund itself. Is that what you're telling us?
Not in the current capacity,
Right.
no.
So-
Not if you allow full health insurance benefits to stay intact.
Right.
So what would be the benefit of moving it?
That was Mr. Meredith's request.
Right. I mean, I think it puts all your dietary costs into one entity. Now, you know what that portion of your school program is costing you.
I like that part, Mitch, but is there another way to do it to where we don't have to keep turning around and refunding it all the time? Cause it sounds like we're gonna constantly be coming back and Brad's gonna be feeding it all the
Move money
time.
around.
I mean, it sounds like we kinda know what the cost is approximately. If we're, I don't know. Mr. Urban.
I'd like to agree with you and leave it alone, and then when her fund balance gets more money in it, then we take money out of it and redo kitchens. I mean, you know.
That's the only place in the school you're gonna do it, it's on bad thing.
Well, I mean,
Because,
you know, she's
just
got.
like we said on that football field, they had to have their own money to pay for it, which is, well, that's fine, that's the way it should be.
Well, I mean, you know, she's got needs,
Brad,
so
what-
let's pull
what-
money out of it.
What's, I mean, the number we're talking about is primarily the employee health insurance. How much is that?
The board expense is just under 500,000
Okay,
per year on average.
So the school system's putting $500,000 into dietary every year, because those people are gonna have health insurance.
So what are you saying?
I'm saying, I think and I think from Brad's standpoint, from an accounting standpoint, it's gonna be much easier to capture those health insurance costs over on the Skyward side, inside of his payroll system, to do that and keep everything in balance and reconcile. Right now, he's gotta do it through a manual process.
But are
Make
we-
sure that all the deductions are meeting what the payments are.
I guess my other thought on that is, do we always have to have this little number sitting here in our budget to keep pushing money over there all the time? I mean, that's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, after this year especially, there would have to be a budgeted amount transferred to other funds.
Yeah.
If it stays in the same capacity. I mean, we had said earlier, you know, they were running a little lower on revenues this year than expenses, so let's just say they break even. We're adding 600,000 in expenses, so, you know, at some point, it'll get below that fund balance minimum threshold. Maybe not next year, as long as the capital's not bought out of dietary, but after next year, we would have to allocate in the general budget, you know, basically that amount probably, whatever that ended up being, maybe it's 450, maybe it's 650, but whatever that amount is, would need to be allocated in the general budget and a transfer to other funds each year to make sure that the fund balance doesn't go below whatever minimum you as a board set.
Are there any school districts that their dietary fund is self-sufficient?
Only if they don't have
No,
health
I mean,
insurance.
I'm asking Mr. Boyd if his experience
As
has
a
been.
practice of putting benefits under the school nutrition fund, yes. But the issue here is, I think, especially with the things that I see that Mrs. Kite's done for efficiencies, the challenge too is that she can't do the deferred maintenance. She may be able to maintain, but you know, what Brad's calling out is she hasn't been able to add $600,000 a year to fund balance. It doesn't appear. To maintain that, we're adding $600,000 cost to her budget, and that also would keep her from doing deferred maintenance in the kitchen. So if we do that, I believe, you know, there's a good chance she can maintain that, but she cannot do deferred maintenance. And then any raises that come around will also cause a greater gap between how much, you know, she brings in and how much she expends. So what I'm saying, you know, what it is now is the board, as you pointed out, takes on that cost. And she's able to operate and focus on deferred maintenance, you know, updating kitchens when she can, and then other expenses associated with running her program. So she is self-sufficient except for those benefits. And if they're going to be an employee of the Washington County school system, if it's our practice to provide one group of employees that benefit, then we certainly don't want to exclude our school nutrition staff. So the decision is, I think we're going to pay one way or another as far as the board's budget.
An hour later. And always.
Either way. And from an operational standpoint, and of course, Mrs. Kite can jump in here, I mean, she's striving hard to always be in the black. I mean, that's her goal, and she also wants to, you know, be able to add to the fund balance just for emergency purposes. But, you know, she might be able to stay +1 in the black, but she cannot do the deferred maintenance to maintain her kitchens with that additional expense.
Jason? Can I ask another question? Is USDA, are they funding, you said 1 breakfast, 1 dinner per child across our school system?
If they come and get it, the children have to participate.
Okay, so they don't, we don't get paid for 9,000 kids, we get paid for however many comes and gets the food, okay.
Whitney, did you have something?
So, given that some of the budget that she's was able to build there, it probably come from some of the COVID money and all this, the federal dollars. Do you see, how long do you see it taking to dwindle that down where we've got to fund it anyway?
If the capital projects are handled out of the general fund, and we move this like the board had voted before, and she comes in, let's just say 1.3 million, let's just say at the end of the year she comes in with that, you know, that's going to knock her down next year, all things being equal, to 700,000. There's got to be a minimum fund balance threshold. That's with general fund purchasing the capital equipment. So you might get away, and you might not have to supplement it for FY22 in that scenario, but come FY23, you certainly will have a big amount that you'll have to supplement.
I know accounting-wise, there's a benefit to it, but ultimately, we're going to fund it anyway, so I don't understand the...
Well, to go back to Mr. Meredith's question, there's programs that can maintain themselves in the black, but they cannot do the scheduled and deferred maintenance without the help of the board. It just doesn't, you know, they're not designed to make a profit. They're designed to serve children, you know, the meals, and to be self-sustainable, but not, you know, not to a point that they make a huge profit. So there are programs that keep above, you know, in the black, but if they have major items, they have to seek other ways to get support, and usually, of course, their board does that. And it just depends on what status we are. It sounds like to me we have several things in the hopper that we need to do as far as deferred maintenance specific to our kitchens. And so, you know, those are not going to be low dollar items.
So really, we're better off for now and for the short future to leave it like it is.
It's one way or another. I think the board's going to have to support the school nutrition program, whether it's the capital outlay items or both. Capital outlay items, and then as the fund balance depletes, because just the cost of the personnel will put her to a point where she may be in the red, or at least start drawing that fund balance down. And then once it always goes below that mark that we set, yes, we're going to continually be adjusting.
What would have to be done is an amount allocated each year, and then each month, when it gets to that point, like Mr. Boyd said, there will be a point where it hits that level. Every month it will hit that level from that point forward. So it would be each month I would be doing a transfer, but I'd have to have, and if I ever got above the amount the board approved in a year's time, we'd have to come back and make a budget amendment to fix it.
Well, or you do like you did with your federal projects, and go ahead and just each year just throw a slug of money over there. I mean, I don't know if you have to do it every month, Brad.
You could do it that way,
Right.
certainly. If we would estimate that we had 500,000, they're going to go in the red, we could go ahead and transfer 500 over, and then if they got below that, bring it back to the board at that point. That's true.
Chad, do you have something?
Well, I just wanted to, I just didn't understand why we have to have the capital projects though for the kitchen. Why wouldn't it be any different than any other capital projects for any other schools? Still coming out of our general fund instead of her funding.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, no matter what, that would make sense to me is, you know, if we're gonna say we're gonna spend $1 million this year for capital funds, just spend $1 million, you know what I'm saying, have that part of it.
I mean, Ms. Scott, you can address that, but my understanding and just practice across the state, I mean, the programs certainly try to be as self-sufficient as they can. And there's some that aren't as successful, and certainly not as successful as Washington County's. But I agree, I mean, you know, they're part of our school system, the department is, the school nutrition, and they're within our facilities and our programs serving our students. So, I mean, it's reasonable to think that. I just know our school nutrition programs try very hard to be self-sufficient.
Brad, from a financial standpoint, what's easier for you?
Well,
Because, I mean, it's brought this long
yeah.
when it's all said and done.
I actually agree with both sides of this. I mean, because I can see both sides of this, actually. I certainly see Mr. Meredith's point, and from the accounting side of capturing it all, but at the same time, we, you know, if you want to know the expense, it does create other domino effects of transferring money, if the board's okay with that. The other side of it is we, in the general fund, have a dietary, it's set up under the dietary part of the general fund, so, you know, it's all in general fund right now has been incurring that for decades. We know what that is, and if you do want to know the cost of the dietary, you just look at the dietary fund, add the general fund part of it. So, you know, I hate to ride the fence on it, but I can see both sides of this, you know, certainly. Obviously, simpler thing to do is leave it like it is, you know, but again, there is validity to what Mr. Meredith says as well, so.
But either way, we're gonna be supplementing.
Either way, you're not getting out of it, you know, there's still gonna be expense incurred either way you do this.
Well, if we took the expense away and she's less on money, then she's got her hands tied on getting stuff worked on or doing.
The general fund would have to
Yes.
cover it. I mean,
Yeah. So why not, that's what her job is, let her just take care of her department and leave it like it is. I make a motion that we leave it like it is.
We've already made, we already voted to change it, so you're making a motion to change it back?
I'm making a motion that we change it back.
Wait a
Leave it
minute.
like it is.
Is this how it is, or is this how we're going?
You all voted a month or two ago to change it for the FY22 budget.
To
meaning you all-
this.
Meaning to this,
To this.
yes. This is
Now we're
what,
changing it, we're saying change it back.
if that's what you all
Okay.
decide. That's,
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Brad, either way, okay, like Keith is saying, let her do repairs or updates.
Did you second that?
Now, you got a motion, we got
Oh,
a second
okay,
before we
sorry.
discuss.
Did you second it?
I will for second
Okay.
discussion. Either way, does she have to come back before the board to ask to spend that money to do those repairs?
yes, of course.
Okay.
yes.
So either way, we're gonna be discussing it. And
That's correct.
We
She's
always
just trying to
approve
clean it up audit-wise.
Yeah, even though there's money allocated in the budget for capital projects, you still as a board have to approve each individual, expenditure when it comes time to buy it.
Okay.
To release those allocated funds.
Right, and I mean, I would trust her to not come before the board, but I know it's policy or probably state laws on it, but.
It is state law.
My point is, either way, we're gonna be discussing.
You know, and to Mr. Meredith's point, I believe, is just to cleanly be able to separate and track. You know, I think either way, I think we can track either way. If it's something we need to deliberately highlight and track monthly, we can without making these changes. Or if we make these changes, I mean, it'll be all in a separate account. But, you know, like I said, we'll still be having these conversations about deferred maintenance. And then if we go below the fund balance, because of the operational expenses in the fund, then we'll be discussing it too. So there's going to be discussions either way. And as far as procedurally and accounting wise, I think we can track either way as well.
Yeah, I mean, from accounting side, we can make it work either way, you all decide.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's vote. We got a motion and David generously gave us a second. So the motion is to
Leave it alone. Let her, put it back like it used to be.
How's that gonna read in the minutes?
it's gonna say, let it alone.
Put it back
Leave-
like
put
it
it like
It's
it
already
used
been
to be.
voted to change it.
Hey, it ain't the first time
It
we've
was-
done that.
It was It was a budget issue.
Come on. Hey, you don't have to vote for it. But we gotta vote on something.
The one that you all voted on that we're talking about a couple months ago, whenever that was, I believe it said medical expenses, didn't it, Brad?
I'm sorry.
Didn't it say medical expenses moving?
And the director's
to-
salary.
Yes, and the salary, it was, in essence, it was all dietary expenses in the general fund would move to the dietary 143
So
fund.
his motion is to stop that from happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would, if I'm, and correct me here, would be to leave the current dietary fund expenses that are in the general fund going forward. Does that accomplish what you're? No. Okay.
So yes is voting for that. Right?
Correct. Mr. Masters?
It's just yes or no.
I'm gonna say no since he done all that. I don't know. It's whatever easier for Brad's the only thing I look at.
Mr. Riddle?
I mean,
I have no idea. Doesn't really matter. I'm gonna say yes.
It's worked for years.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
No.
You say no?
No.
Mr. Meredith?
No.
Mr. Day?
I'm gonna say yes since I said it's a bad idea.
5-4. 4-4.
4-4, so that means no.
Oh, Lord, and that ain't here, is she? Well, so what's that mean?
Motion failed.
You change it next time.
I'm sorry, bitch, just bring it back up next time. As long as she don't buy no propane buses, I don't care what she says. Okay.
From an accounting standpoint, I mean, the way Brad's employee HR stuff works inside of Skyward, by not having the benefits recorded there, does create a little bit of a manual reconciliation process. Brad and I talked about it, it's gonna be easier from an accounting perspective to handle it to take the health insurance out of the dietary.
Yeah, I mean, it ain't a huge deal to me either way. I was just thinking we always had to keep adding money, you know, but it doesn't matter. It's not that big a deal. So, yeah.
I just want to
That's
make
it.
sure everyone's aware. I mean, you know, will be the request for the deferred maintenance and those kinds of costs. And then, of course, if it does go below the point for the fund balance, the board will, you know, we'll have to have that mechanism to address it. And then, you know, also that's not a reflection of mismanagement on Mrs. Kite's
Sure.
and her team.
Yeah, and I think for me, when I first got on the board, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize we was feeding it that much. I just thought it was doing that good. And then when we talked a few weeks ago, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. We're putting in $500,000 to make it do that good. I mean, nothing against Ms. Kite, but I mean, we're doing it either way. So anyway, okay, let's move on, can we?
Well, you have to establish a minimum fund balance. Since
Okay.
that motion failed.
I'll make a motion, 500,000.
What'd you say the record total?
That's what he said it was.
That's what he recommended.
Okay, roughly. That's roughly 1.5 months.
I'd like to amend his motion and make it $750.
And make it two months.
We need a second.
Okay.
You made a motion, we need a
motion
second.
that we amend his motion to make it $750 instead of
What's 2 months,
500.
Brad?
On the current budget, it'd be roughly 600,000, but the new budget, it has some more expenses in it. So, you know, I mean, 650, 700 would be roughly 2 months.
How about if I just withdraw my motion, you make that, and we'll just be clean.
Please.
I'll just withdraw mine.
Thank you. Still need a second.
Second.
No second.
What's the motion?
$750, is that right, Keith? 750,000.
For me,
Okay. No more discussion? All right, roll call vote, Jennifer.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Aye.
Ms. Dillinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Moon? Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Carried.
So what we'll need, I'm sorry.
I just said thank you.
Oh, yeah. What we'll need to discuss now, and this will be for the general fund, well, excuse me, I'm gonna get ahead of myself. Let's pull up the dietary budget for FY22. And that's the capital needs. Give me just a moment. Okay. I'll click on the right document here in just a moment.
I tried to turn the air on, it didn't come on. Does that thing work? You know?
I'll go look at it.
I hit on and turned it on 60.
I'll let my assistant go do it.
Get your assistant to that.
Somebody turn the iron on, dang.
I put it on 68 and turned it on,
Be
but
sure it's on cool.
Turn the program
that looks like a new thermostat.
You turned it on heat.
That's high tech right there. That's part of that.
I had to figure out how to use it like a rotor dial phone. I was like, how do you turn that thing on?
Who's trying to speed this meeting up?
Yeah,
But it was on heat.
get everybody hot, they get out of here quick all day.
Happens upstairs all the time, doesn't it?
Oh, gosh, yes.
I thought you was gonna click on the right document.
I'm on.
Oh, okay.
They said they couldn't hear when that was on. I told them you're welcome.
Tell me I ain't missing nothing.
I'm gonna freeze the pain.
Freeze the
Okay.
pain.
Okay, so you do have a dietary budget in the packet as well, this document that I've got in front of me. So you can see that. So we have the FY21 budget setting here. I'll highlight that. And then we have the FY22 budget, and we've got the step only is column K. We have column M is the 1% raise, 2%, 3%, and 4%. So, the things that we need to discuss right now that will come out when I go to the expense portion, since you've set a $750,000 minimum fund balance in dietary, we know we're adding $600,000 approximately in expenses. This the capital equipment right here, $625,000, that obviously can't stay in dietary. So that's going to be zeroed out, meaning you're going to have to decide in the general fund how much of that you're going to fund. All of it, part of it, that'll be your decision as a board. So we'll be adding, if you approve the whole thing, that amount to the general budget here shortly. So for now, I'm going to zero this out on the capital equipment request for the purpose of the dietary budget. That dropped the expense by $625,000. And this is, remember we said we were adding $600,000 in expenses? That's almost exactly what the deficit is right here. So a deficit, depending on which raise we end up going with for the system, which would be the same for dietary tonight, you can see projected shortfalls 550 with 1%, 566 on up to 596. That exactly translates into that 600,000. So all things being equal as last year, dietary would be projecting a slight surplus just like they did last year. So that's where I want you to understand why we're looking at a projected surplus, which the board will ultimately fund. So
Brad, let me ask this question. So now let's just take your second column there. Go down to the bottom where you've got your surplus
right here.
Okay, so yeah, if you're using that column, so the 551.
Is that the 1%?
That's the difference between your revenues and expenditures for the year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you got 551, what's our projected beginning fund balance?
Well, right now we're guessing at what the fund balance will be at the end of this year.
Right.
We took a number of 1.3 million just to be kind of conservative. So you just simply sum those up, that'll be $748,649.36, I believe, let's see. I got that right, $748,649.36.
So that would meet our policy that we just recently.
Right, so at the end of next year, all things being equal, they'll go below the $750,000 by less than $2,000.
Help me a second, anybody. Does this go in the general? I'm trying to figure out, do we need to do this before we do the general?
Well,
because what we do in the general is gonna affect what we do right here, so how can we
You're
prove this
correct.
if we don't know what we're gonna do there?
That's a good point. What we had to do first was establish a minimum fund balance, and since you voted to keep your change that you did, we've established a minimum fund balance, so the point now may be to go to the general fund, decide what a raise is, and you'll know now, and when you decide what raise it is, whichever, the column would be applicable.
I think we have to.
Yeah.
Don't we?
So since you've established the minimum fund balance, you've established the capital projects will be funded out of general fund for dietary. You're keeping it as you voted a month or two ago. Now would be appropriate to go to the general fund.
Good idea, Brad.
Chad asked a
Yes,
question.
Mr. Fleener.
Is the revenue numbers correct between the FY '21 budget and the FY '22 budget?
Yeah.
The revenues?
They are because, and Caitlin can certainly speak with greater detail, but these are more reflective of what's happened this year. You'll notice a revenue decline in these categories because of the way COVID has been, and then an increase here. Caitlin can explain the details as to why that's the case.
But those numbers are correct, though, the total revenue numbers.
These are what Caitlin gave me today.
Okay.
So what is, why does our children's lunch payments drop from $720,000 to $33,000?
Because they're not paying for lunch anymore. USD has free lunch, so they're not bringing in money to lunch.
Oh, so the budget last year, or this year, was acting like the kids were paying even though they really weren't.
Actually, up until about 8 hours ago, we were budgeting like FY '21, and then I remembered that they have approved it for free, and this is how the money's flowing this year. The figures that you're seeing in FY '22 are based on what we have right now coming in and how the money's flowing in. So kids are just not bringing in money. They're bringing in money to buy chips and stuff, but that doesn't equate to what a meal costs or breakfast costs.
Should we look at that number close to where we were in FY '19 or FY '20 before we started dealing with COVID? I mean, what would be our lunch revenue from kids in pre-COVID days?
FY '21 is a representation of what a typical year was looking like, obviously. That's why we had FY '21.
But we weren't in school
Right.
we weren't in school this last year, so the 720, we didn't have money coming from kids.
You're asking, was that real money? The F-121, the 720, you're saying that's not real
I'm asking
money?
what were we normally getting before COVID?
That's where you come up with
in
the
19
720
or
number.
18 or FY '20.
Yeah, that's represented in FY
33,000?
'21. No.
720, Mitch.
A regular year.
That was our regular years. 1920 was 720.
Before COVID. And it's mainly just shifted. I mean, you probably saw this. I mean, this number's 400,000 more. This number's all 329 more. The revenue's still, less than $200,000 than it was projected in FY '21.
It's gonna be more this coming year because more kids are gonna eat free lunch.
And
And
the
they're
free
gonna go in
goes,
there.
so these lines, notice, go up. It's just a different way of the revenue coming in, even though there's a slight decrease in budget projection, but for revenue. But these lines here, the 1.9 millions went
That's why I say
up.
it's gonna go up.
Yeah, this line's went up, this line went up slightly, and even this has had an increase. So, I mean, it's not even, granted, but it's about, what, 183,000 less in projected revenue when you look here to here. It's just shifting the funds of where, there's different buckets the revenue's going to come in.
And that 33 will not represent if they don't actually come through the line, correct?
The
Or does it?
33,000 represents a child coming through and buying something a la carte or a second lunch. Right now, no breakfast or lunch that the first meal that the child gets are being recorded in lunch payments. They're being recorded in the USDA lunch
Okay.
program reimbursement. So, and you have to think that 33,000 also represents how long school was closed down and kids weren't in school bringing money at all. There was no money flowing as lunch payments during that time. And we just recently started, bringing in a little bit of cash from second meals and a la carte purchases.
But
Does that make sense?
Is the USDA reimbursement, is it less than what we normally charge for lunch?
It is slightly more.
Slightly more.
What percent of kids is
Well-
eating school lunch right now?
Okay, well, it's slightly more than what we charge because every kid is free and we get $3.50 roughly for their lunch. And we charge $2.90 at the high school, for instance, and then we get 35 cents again on top of that. So, I mean, it just comes in different.
That's why I say there will be more kids that eat
Let's
school
hope. I mean,
lunch.
but you gotta think there's a lot of kids that stay virtual.
Yeah.
They're not in our schools. There are a lot of kids who've withdrawn from public schools, so that's affected our lunch meal.
Are we gonna feed through the summer?
We are feeding all summer, we're feeding
So
all
we
the
don't have
sites that are
enough
running for
of that.
summer
We have this.
school. I hope to have large numbers. If we could do deliveries, maybe we could do that again. That was a big help to our budget then, but we have to have the help of, the general purpose, bus drivers to do that. And also, there were a lot of quarantine and shut down schools that affected. I mean, every time a school shut down, no meals were served. I mean, we served curbside, but maybe 10 people came and got meals versus 500 at Gray, for instance, when they shut down so those things have affected, the revenue. And I can only base it and try to be conservative with it, knowing that I don't know how this year will flow under these circumstances. I had originally budgeted my budget again about 8 hours ago, switched it to this because what I had budgeted really represented a regular school year, and we're not returning to a regular school year for people.
Where do we think we're going to end up in actual revenue for FY '21? Okay, Brad. I mean, that was our budget number, but where do we think we'll? I mean, you've got 9 months in there already, so.
we can pull up what I had in finance committee if you want me to do that again. It's got all the numbers.
So this gauge right now, I don't anticipate it changing from that. It stays steady with that. I anticipate.
The budget is 3.2 million. I'm just, are we going to blow that out of the water? We're going to need it and be a little south of longer. So what's your, Brad, slide on over to the right. So what's our, okay, so we're at $1,997,000. And if we pick up, what, Caitlin, another 250,000 a month for the next 3 months?
Yeah.
750?
Yeah, it's hard to gauge that.
You need to look at this year here, because last year you see this massive amount, that was COVID
And we were
deliveries, so.
to people's doors.
So you got, what, 3, 5, 6, 7? Yeah, you 7.
770, 780.
So you'll be at what, 2 points?
She'll be knocking on 2.8, close to it.
So we budgeted 3.2.
We did. We didn't know school was going, I mean, it's just not been a normal year.
So the 3 million, okay, so 3 million may be a decent revenue budget.
I think so.
Even pre-COVID, we didn't get there, did we?
This is just for 9 months on these totals out here, so if you added like,
Even if you had 650 right there, up at the top, at 20, what is it, 20? I can't see
you add this, see, that's 734,000 in 1 month last year, but that's not normal.
Yeah, but that was timing because we lost out on April.
You did time it, and then COVID as well, extra lunches, but 780, that's 1180, 1260, add 1260, I mean, you're 3.5 million plus last year.
But go a year before.
Go a year back, you're at 600, almost 800, you're right at 3 million, 2.9 to 3 million is what was FY 18 or FY 19. So 3 million seems reasonable to me, based on what we know. Okay, go to the general fund. Jason, if no more questions on dietary, and then whatever percentage raise you all decide on, we'll apply the dietary.
Let's do.
Good?
I think that's a good idea, don't you guys?
Okay. And when we get to the general fund, the dietary needs for capital, we'll pull this sheet back up. And you have this sheet in your packet too. Okay, the thing I need to mention with general fund, BEP funding that everyone's waiting on, the state, even though we're at the end of April, still doesn't have that to us. So I've been in contract with Ms. Dursky, the Executive Director of Finance for TDOE. She, for the purpose of tonight's meeting, is recommending that we be conservative with the BEP number. Even though we anticipate, assuming the General Assembly approves an increase and hold harmless, if they do, we would anticipate it to be more than this. But for tonight's purpose, we have to go with what she said to go with, which is about a $600,000 reduction in what we got last year. That's kind of the minimum that we can count on. So this budget you approved tonight to send to the county mayor's office, you like to keep that in mind. We will get BEP funding numbers possibly by the end of the week, but that's out of our control. And certainly we anticipate and hope for much more, but that's what we have to go on tonight. So that will make it a tighter budget for tonight. But to meet the statute by May 1st, as Mr. Meredith pointed out before, we need to have something that you approve tonight to go to the mayor's office, even if that's not our even if we do a revision, when you get that in. So with that.
So for starters, Brad, on the 4% raise, 2,647,416.
That's with have-to expenses on your top column. I'll pull that up for everyone.
That's what I was wondering. So that's a non-negotiable item right there.
Correct.
And then down below it is the stuff that we added, reoccurring expenses, and then the next page was non-reoccurring expenses.
That's correct. Yeah. So loaded in the budget already, and I'll pull that document up, is this top section that are must-haves. I think the health insurance we did just today get told to plan on a 2.5% increase in health insurance, so that is comparable to 187,000 on here.
What's our capabilities?
Let me just go to another document, and I've got it all summarized.
Is that a bad question?
No, it's a good question. It's an important question. So also in your packet is what I'm pulling up now. We've referred to this as a narrative before, and this will summarize where we are. The first page should say step only. It will look like this. It will say FY22 budget with step pay increase. And basically I have the master document, and it's uploaded to BOE Connect, the full budget itself with all the detailed lines. This is going to summarize where that is. So step increase only, we're coming in at an expense of $73,231,000, which is much less than the current budget because there's a lot of big one-time items that came out of the budget this year. So it's actually less than the current budget. The current budget in effect $75 million. So that's certainly positive. Notice at the top the BEP amount, $597,000 reduction. That is just for the purpose of tonight's meeting because that's what we had to go by Ms. Dursky. Notice the sales tax, 17.1 million, 1.4 million increase. That's because that's real collections the last 12 months. That's not a projected increase. That's real collections. It was actually 17.1.5, but in case we get a negative ADA split impact, that should cover the sales tax part of that. So the property tax is very close to last year, but the dollars just calculate to about an 83,000 reduction. It's just what the pennies calculate. Here's what you're going to be looking at, Mr. Day. This amount, the gap. This is a 2 million gap for step increase only with the must-have items. That is based on the reduced BEP amount for the purpose of this meeting. You know, certainly if the BEP comes in 1 million more, 2 million more, whatever, now it may not, but if it does, you can keep in mind some of that gap would be closed. The must-have expenses on this document are already included. That's $707,416. You'll have the other items are listed the same as that budget change list, are all listed here on the bottom. So if you the question will be, what if you fully load everything? I'll take you to that right now.
So right now, while you're doing that, if we went on the 4% raise, it's $2 million basically more than just the step.
So it'd be
Yeah.
2 plus the 2?
So
Yeah,
you're
the
at a
3.976 is with
Yeah.
4%.
And that's only with the must-have items, not with any of the other that we had talked about before. So the question that probably be asked is, if you fully load it, so to speak, what's your deficit? So at the bottom of my sheet, I've got some additional numbers here that won't show on yours just because of the formatting. So if you fully load every single thing, all the requests, recurring and non-recurring, and you have a 4% raise, that's a projected gap of 5.6 million. We hope a lot of that will be made up with BEP, but we don't know that for sure now.
But that's with a $600 reduction in BEP.
600,000. Now, the one thing I will say that's not included on here is the dietary capital needs of 625,000. None of that is captured here, so that is
Do
something.
you have the insurance, or have you already moved that out?
That's already moved out, yeah.
Mary Beth's got a question for you, Brad.
Several of the optional include raises, so if we decided to go with the 4%, we could eliminate some of those down there. I mean, that would be fair, that would be for everybody, wouldn't it?
It would.
Even though certain groups I know would ask for a little bit more, but if 4% for everybody would be fair.
Let me ask y'all something too, and Mr. Boyd, should we, I'd kinda like to see it without the non-reoccurring and just work it that way. And then just add the non-reoccurrings at the end. Does that make sense?
All for wants.
Well, yeah, I think we ought to say, all right, if we based it, Mr. Boyd recommended we try to shoot for the 4% if that's possible, right?
Yes, sir.
And he felt like that was more important than anything else we got on here. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's say we just tried to start there and then go through our optional budget items that are reoccurring and then look at the non-reoccurring at the end, because some of the non-reoccurring is ESSER money, correct?
We could
Some.
we could address those with ESSER dollars. Not
Whatever.
all, but most.
But-
I think we
Yeah,
should
but
just do like you're saying and make it solid with what we gotta have right now.
Yeah.
And then take that from a time constraint thing, take
Yeah.
that May 1, what we
Yeah.
gotta have and add the 4% in, and then go from there. Once we know what our BEP dollars are and everything.
And adding to that, I think we ought to take, last year we added how much out of our general fund? 3 million?
The most recent budget amendment was budgeted to pull almost 4 million.
4, that's right.
Right at 4 million.
So we know we can take, now, when we say that, is that counting this additional 2? Is that coming out of that number this
Let
time?
me make sure I know what you asked me. I thought you was asking me how much you budgeted to pull from your fund balance for this year, is that correct?
Okay, so last year, we voted and we went out on a limb a little bit and we took like 4 million.
That's right. With the latest budget amendment, you're right at 4 million.
So
3.94, I believe.
is this coming out of that same money? So are you telling me I'm already spending it right now, 4 million?
So, the end of the year will determine if we really tap in and spend any of that 3.9 million. Right now, aside from something crazy, I don't think we're going to. That the way that it's tracked, expenses and revenues are
Because
tracking.
we're coming in more money every month.
Well, the sales tax has been a huge help, number one. And it's just the expenditures, you know, it's not been a normal year. So we have had some savings there. We spent some of that savings that you all voted on.
So are you saying safely, if we went to 3.9 million on the 4% raise, you feel comfortable if we went another hypothetical million
Okay.
out of that money that you're saying we didn't even spend?
Right
You
now,
follow
we're
me?
tracking not to spend
I won't
it right
spend
now,
5 million.
but I just.
Well stated.
Yeah. I guess to make this simple, what we need to know is, are we comfortable to spend 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million? And I can make this go, it'll be a lot easier.
Well, we've got this 1.42,000 for additional expense.
Under a 1% raise, go all the way down to 4.
Well,
That's
I
what-
thought that figure is what this is gonna cost at no percent raise.
Yeah, and
That's what that is.
This, right.
I'm
well,
looking at this page, this one,
go.
There's a total if you.
the wish list.
Recurring and non-recurring.
Yeah, I'm on the same, I'm on a different page. I mean, I think I'm looking at the
You're
same
back on the
thing.
budget.
I'm looking at the wish list.
But are you looking at which one?
We are adding,
Where's he at?
principals at 12-month employee, and we're adding, principal 5K to,
Oh, I see it, okay. That's
and it
right.
is 1%.
But I'm on the 4% page, he's on the 1% page.
Correct.
You see what I'm saying?
I know what
You
you're
got
saying,
that?
but I mean,
So it's
You know,
1,050,000 on the board.
I wanna give them as much money as we possibly can, but I don't want to be, cause that is a reoccurring funds.
I understand that. Yeah,
And,
that part
you
you're
know,
talking
who
about
knows
is
what's
only like $12,000 difference on that part.
Yeah.
So you're saying with the must-haves, 4%, we're at 3.9.
We would be adding, according to Brad here,
2.6?
2 point.
Plus 3.9.
Go to, well, you're at Brad, help me, 71,195,142.
Right.
With a 4% raise, you're gonna add 3,976,542.
That would be pulled from, budgeted to pull from fund balance, 4% raise, must-haves only, without any of
That's
the
what I'm
wish
saying.
list.
Which is a
Yeah.
total of 75 million.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Now, what Keith's saying is, what we asked for that are reoccurring is another 1 million. If you
Yes.
go,
Correct.
I'm just saying worst case scenario, the 4's 1,051,000.
Right, that's what I'm,
Brad, what did we do last year in percent raise? 2%?
We didn't do much last
1%.
year.
We haven't given a really good raise in years. And I just think we owe, and I think the 4% will affect everybody, and a lot of these things in our optional or wish list maybe could be eliminated, because the 4% is gonna be pretty good.
Yeah, but we're sitting here, Mary Beth, eliminating the principal's 12 months.
Well, they're gonna get 4%.
But still,
Okay.
don't,
No,
we sit here.
Keith, we ain't took that out yet.
We haven't, I'm just saying.
That's still in the,
I thought it was another $1 million more added to it.
yeah, but Brad's gonna tell us if we can afford all that or not.
But, I mean, that's what
Ain't you, Brad?
it's added to this 3.9, isn't it?
Yes.
Those wish lists are things we need to work through. I
Yeah.
mean, there's, some of that, there's no way or no need, I mean, it's
And
not
like Mary
happening.
Beth said, the ones in that
3.9
wish list
plus
that add
61.
more,
Some of it's
4%
covered.
we need to take out.
All right, let's discuss it.
I mean, that's my thought.
I agree. I
That's
mean,
what we gotta
'cause
do.
And I think
they'll be
that-
double
Which ones we
dipping
take
if we
out?
do that.
4% is
We gotta have this done.
fair,
This gotta go
you
May
know,
1st.
everybody gets 4%.
Right.
We don't have, we gotta get this done
Well,
I
tonight.
mean,
Well, those that
How
have
do you-
higher salaries.
Can we,
How do we do away with the sped, 2 high school sped
Well, that's-
teachers? How do we do away with an additional nurse?
I do agree that the two sped need to be.
You know?
We've got to have two sped teachers.
Right. I
We have
think
no other
that
choice.
needs
Well,
to be
okay, whoa.
redone.
Let's start one at a time. We're getting way out. Go ahead, Lee.
Mr. Chairman, could we vote at this point to go with this budget with a 4% raise? Agree on that, then move on and work on this list?
I think that'd be a great idea.
I'd like to make a motion that we do
I'll
so.
sit. Mary Beth.
Let's get that out of the way.
Let's get a little discussion. We got one man over here wants to talk about it.
I'm still, I just wanna make sure I'm clear. The difference on this, if, say I go from a 3% page to 2% page, let's just say that. The difference with a 3% raise going from fund balance would be 3.49. 4% raise going from fund balance would be 3.97.
That's right.
Right.
You're reading it
That's
right.
clear.
Yes.
So, and that's with the must-haves, insurance and all that. This must-have, total must-have expenses, if you just go down a little bit more, it talks about the 2.162416. That's if you added all that new stuff below it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Crystal clear, thank you, sir.
All right.
It's reoccurring funds.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
Let's vote on
This
this.
3.4 million is reoccurring
Yes.
money.
Yeah, it is.
It has to be
3.9.
3.9, whatever, it is reoccurring funds.
Yes,
It's
it-
every year.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
So
Jennifer.
restate, what's the motion, Mr. Chair?
The motion is to accept the 4% raise as is
With the Mustangs.
with the must-haves. Then we're gonna move on to any additions or corrections or takeaways
Additions, yeah.
on the other list of reoccurring and not.
So we're voting on essentially the amount
Yeah.
of raise that we want.
Yes, sir. All right, Mr. Fleener.
Just one more question, please. What have we got in fund balance projected with, if we use everything we projected on spending? I'm not talking about what we look like we're on track for, but what would we have if we had spent everything we're supposed to in expenses? What was supposed to be our fund balance come January or July 1, 2021?
You're saying hypothetical.
Just
From if we'd had already done this.
Plus, I'm gonna take 3.9 away from it. Just what is that? Do you know? Do you have that somewhere?
I can pull it up. I mean, it was.
Is that pulling the 4 out that y'all used last year?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if
What
we
you
spend
found,
every
what you
dime.
budgeted?
We've
Yes.
not used.
We ain't used
I
it.
don't
I know,
care.
but he's
I
just
want to
saying-
know.
If we don't use any this year, if we don't use any this year is what you're saying, and then if you use 4, I'd drop us to about 8.
And what is your suggested minimum fund balance for us? 8?
8 was always my goal to get there. We've surpassed that.
So we'd be at 8 if we
Didn't you say
used-
4 or 5 last year was your minimum?
8 was the goal.
We're trying to make some, we're trying to make some ground here, Brad. We're moving up in the world.
All right.
Let's vote for anybody change their mind, Jennifer.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
I'll get it, yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
All agree.
Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, let's go down this, Mr. Boyd, do you suggest we go down these one at a time? On the,
You're on the,
Optional.
optional.
optional reoccurring.
Yes, sir. I think that would be the best way to do that.
And
I'd like to say we remove anything that pertains to more money on salary, we take off.
I agree.
all right, so which ones is that?
That'll be all the pay increases for anything.
That'd be principals to become 12-month, principals 5K, principals 5K, assistant.
Okay.
I thought we
Athletic,
wanted them to be 12 months, because they're working 12 months.
It makes me nervous to budget that much.
you're a nervous person.
Well.
And that's why we hired you. That's why you hired you. To be nervous about that.
So,
Brad?
Yes, Mitch.
Is the 4% that we just approved doesn't have any impact on our our principals?
Well, they would get that 4% would funnel down to, that'd be
Okay,
every
okay.
employee.
Everybody get 4%.
Okay.
Right.
Approved.
Yes,
Yeah,
across the
it's-
board.
Yeah, it would be across the board.
So, I hate to say it, maintenance 10% increase.
There's nurses, there's accounting clerks on there, there's principals and assistant principals from memory.
Yeah, RN pay scale.
So,
Climbing curve.
so I want to, if we do that, I'd like to help Philip and go back to at least 6% on maintenance.
so you'd just be adding 2.
Well,
On this
we
one.
had 10, we're giving them 4,
So
so
you-
give them 6 extra.
6 more?
6
on top
more.
of 4,
Yeah,
so put them at 10.
I'd still put them at 10, but everybody's getting 4. Mr. Flainer,
Why don't we mix and match it again instead of just turn around and say, well, if we give everybody 4%, everybody's getting 4%.
well, because
Now we're
remember,
like,
there's underpaid, we said. When we put it on there.
well, then we need to restructure then, because just like Ms. Dillinger just said, I mean,
I feel you, but
I've
as
got
long
a-
as,
never mind.
as long as you do that, you're always gonna be doing that. And fires in August, it just don't always work that way.
it wasn't like,
I mean, that's
but if we're
for,
gonna go down, I'd rather sit down and go over all pay scales, because you're just picking a winner. Last year it was another winner. Are we picking a winner every year?
if you bring one,
Where's the dial at?
if you bring one, I guess we are. Yes, sir.
I think we just need to move forward with the 4% across the board, because that's something we need to do as a board to get salaries moving in that direction. It's been a long time without, we need to do that for everybody, everybody. Then we can pick and choose what is needed from that point. Everybody's not gonna get 4% every year, that's not possible. You can't do that.
It has been.
But you can pick and choose kinda as need requires beyond this year. So
To get
we
them
just
up to
need to get
scale.
in the right direction on this. And you gotta start somewhere, and you know, this helps everybody. Maybe next year, everybody doesn't need as much help, and one area needs to be addressed more than another. So we're just trying to get that direction with this. And I think this is a good start.
I just think you're spreading this gap's going that way.
Does everybody in Eastman make the same money?
What are your,
I'm just asking, I didn't know, I thought everybody made the same. Okay, so we agree to back out, is that what y'all are saying, agree to back out any other pay scale increase out of
That's a
this?
starting place to get our numbers down.
So Brad, what's that do?
It'll take me a moment just to move those.
What do y'all got next on your mind?
We got to have 2 sped teachers at the high school. We have no other choice.
Okay.
They almost need to be in that upper part.
Yes,
We talked about
that's
it
more of a
last
have to than a want, my opinion.
All right, Ms. Wagner wants an additional nurse at Boones Creek Elementary. How we feel about that?
I want to support it. Let me ask a question about that. I know they hadn't voted on that, but there was talk that they were going to pay more for nurses at the state level. Has that not come to fruition? Is that still a hope, or is that, has that been shot down?
We won't know that until we get the BEP detail, because I've heard that as well. If that's true, that component of the BEP formula will be increased, but we won't know
But they
that.
will get that. That will go to the nurses, not just in our fund, correct?
Not
That'll be up to the board.
That's a funding formula that generates funds based on a ratio, and then the board determines how that's spent.
Okay.
I got a question. Can somebody help me on this counselor at Midway for 70,000?
It's a net.
She ain't here.
Mark that one off.
Mark that one off. No, I don't know. I mean,
I
can
don't-
somebody give me
I
a
don't
good,
either.
I don't remember. Do you
I
know,
don't,
Mr.
I don't
Boyd?
have any insight on that.
Would they not answer to the high school, or to their, whatever school they're directed from to Midway? Would they not answer to those counselors?
I feel like we got enough people at Midway, but now I don't know. Does anybody sitting back there in the back want to comment? Yay or nay or?
On Midway.
So does anybody want to take that off, or do we want to leave that on? Counselor, take it off.
Well, we don't know what it's for, so let's take it off.
Take it off.
I believe that is, currently there's a shared position between Midway and Asbury, and that's to provide a counselor at both locations, to stop the sharing of the position.
Well, before,
There's not that many
yeah, I
people
do
there.
remember his name. You're exactly right. It was a shared, but if we do combine them two, you know, Midway and Asbury ever combine, you're gonna have two people instead of,
I don't think we need that. Ain't that many people. That's just my personal.
Do need to clarify something on the salaries. Does that mean the dance coach stipend that you all talked about earlier, do I remove
No,
it or
don't
leave
take
that
that.
in? Okay,
Just the payroll. Just-
okay, okay.
There's only, it looks like the principals, the maintenance. Y'all
are you
see?
gonna vote on the maintenance? Are we voting on each
Said the
one of those
council.
individually? Or you just gonna, or you just?
He
picking
just
your-
took all the raises
He's just
off.
taking them out.
So why is the Gators reoccurring? Is that because we're renting them for 8,500 apiece?
That's what I was gonna ask
A
Mr.
year.
Patrick.
I may have stuck it in the wrong box. It's not reoccurring, the Gator, if I put that.
Yeah, it's showing
What's
reoccurring.
the pay scale, accounting clerk scale modification?
I moved it. That was where Mr. Meredith and me had talked about in the committee about syncing it up with an entry point of the county. But I just took it off since you all said,
So pull it out.
that's up to you all. That's,
Yeah, may I make a recommendation?
Yes, sir.
You had mentioned going just line item by, or item by item. If you would, you know, that might move faster if you go item by item and let everyone vote, just move down the list.
You wanna do that?
And then at the end of it,
See
we
what
can
we
then
have.
total the amount.
Let's do it.
so you want me to
Great
go
idea,
back,
sir.
No discussion, just vote.
so I should go back to like it was, right?
Yeah.
Take it off as we
Start at the top of
Or
that
just sit
list.
still for a minute.
Okay.
I'll sit still for a minute.
Two
Oh.
questions, Mr. Chairman, if
Yes,
you would.
sir. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Boyd, what's your opinion on the principles? You know, we didn't get a chance to ask you, the difference between the 12-month principles and the way they are now.
Well, my opinion is, you know, listening to the discussion, watching it on the board meeting, of course, I agreed with the sentiment that they're doing the work, and if they are doing the work and we haven't been paying them to do that 12-month work, then they should get paid, you know, their salary should match that.
Okay.
So that's my opinion. Knowing that principals do work. There's no such thing as a 13th month, but I'm sure if they could, if you get credit for it, they would work 13 months.
And one other question, the RN pay scale, establish a separate pay scale. I don't know nothing, I don't.
We were going to discuss that tonight, actually. I have something Ms. Wagner had asked to put together.
So we're going to go to that spot and then
Up to you all.
Cause I don't know, something, I mean, you don't plan.
I think we're gonna go line item by line item.
Yeah, I mean, just as a matter, if I may, recommendation, just because of knowing how important each one of these items are, I would suggest, some of them will move faster than others, but go item by item, and if there is any discussion, even though maybe it would be preferred there not be, but there should be if there needs to be, and then you can discuss then. So when we get, for example, to that nurse scale item, then certainly a discussion and clarification before you cast your vote. But I think it's worthwhile to move through these items and everyone cast their vote and voice, you know, and we can move from there.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm asking Brad to figure something for us real quick, cause I know everybody like to know. Whatever they're making, I wanna know what the principals are getting right now with the 4% raise, before we
With
vote
it.
on that. Is that okay? Yeah,
So you're meaning if you keep that, cause that'll go up by 4% is what you're saying?
I wanna know whatever they're making right now, if I give them a 4% raise today, how close am I to getting to that number? In other words, we're giving them 5K in this motion, but if we give them 4% today, how close is that getting them to the 5K? Does that make sense?
Based upon
Yeah.
their salary now.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, is that hard to do?
I thought the 5K was for the assistant principals.
Now, the second line,
The high
That was
school
just for the high
principals,
school.
because
Okay, I see.
they're
I
already
see.
12 months, is not what it was. I can tell you
See,
without,
Chad, that goes back to, just like the maintenance. Certain positions need to be,
Everybody at JDC makes the same money.
no, they don't.
I
I promise they don't.
without
The
getting
more money they
exact-
make JDC, the more money they make.
more money JD makes.
That's right. We all
But when
win.
JD ain't selling the house, then nobody's making
That's
nothing.
right, exactly.
So that's,
I can get exact numbers, but I can't do it right now
That's
at this
okay,
moment,
just
but
get
I
us
can get you
close.
pretty close.
I thought everybody liked to know.
Yeah, I can get you pretty close here. And then we're gonna add roughly 17 points.
Sorry, guys.
Oh, that's all right for you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, it's a pretty good question, I thought.
Just time consuming.
I was really thought Chad would ask it, so I thought I'm gonna go ahead and get this one.
Okay, roughly 50 grand. That's within 5 or 10 grand. 4%.
That's
Principal's
Wow.
making 50,000.
That's not each principal.
No, that's not each principal,
That's
that's
a
for all
total.
of them combined.
So how many are they?
Total system expense, 15.
15 divided, so
Counting
50,000 divided by
14.
15? That's what I wanna know. right
And
there.
we're talking average here.
$3,700.
Yeah.
3,700, so about 4%, we're a little over $1,000 off of the 5,000.
I think
Okay.
4% just eliminates it, just cuts it through.
That's, yeah, that's fine, I just wanted to know
It's
The
close.
difference.
what that did for them. Okay, and that doesn't mean to change that you don't wanna make them 12-month employees now, it's different.
And that was fixed costs and all, that wasn't the gross cost. You know, so roughly $70,000, 4% is $2,800 before taxes.
Okay.
So that's that.
All right, so a motion, the principals become 12-month employees with a, and then that's a $5,000 raise?
That's high
That's
schools
separate.
only.
Right.
That's a separate item.
Separate.
Yeah.
Two items under one category. Okay, so first motion we need is for principals to become 12-month employees.
They're bundled together, right?
No.
No, sir. They're categorized together, but they're separate items.
And that's continuing to give them the basic 4% raise.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And
Yes,
making
I-
them a 12-month
Do
employee.
you want a motion? You just want a
Yeah,
yes or no?
let's motion and vote.
Get motion.
I'll make a motion.
All right, motion is principals become 12-month employees.
I'll second that.
Chad Fleener second that. Everybody clear? Roll call vote, Jennifer.
Mr. Irvin, Ms. Dellinger,
Yes.
Mr. Fleener,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Buchanan, not here, sorry. Gone to school. Mr. Masters,
Yes.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. Meredith,
Nope.
that a no?
Yes.
It was a no.
You wanna wait on Mr. Hammond?
We can vote for him.
I know he's gonna say yes,
I know he is too.
but we'll wait.
I would recommend waiting.
Now,
Here
question,
he
we're
goes.
already at a 3.9 million deficit. Do you want me to keep a running total as you approve these and what the deficit is? Okay.
That's a good idea.
Okay. Okay.
About the principals to become 12-month employees.
Motion for or?
For it.
For it, yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Carries.
Okay, do we have a motion to give principals 5K raise, high school only?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
With us making them a 12-month employee, or
They're already
12
with us.
month.
Doesn't apply to high schools. They already are.
Where's high school going?
This is just the elementary K-8s.
Yeah, what you did is you made the K-8s 12-month employees, but that doesn't do anything to the high schools. So basically, you would be giving the K-8 principals a pay increase, but nothing to the high school principals.
Other than their 4%.
Other than the 4%.
And you're telling me, is this $17,000 for all of,
That's fixed costs and all, the three
High
high
school
school
only.
principals plus fixed costs.
But all principals just became 12-month employees.
Yes.
high school already was?
K-8, but high schools already are.
Okay.
All, yeah, all principals.
All principals, and this is
12 months.
just high school only additional, but we
Yeah.
just gave a 4% raise.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so what you're doing otherwise is giving a 4% raise plus
Plus,
making
yeah.
it 12 months, which is pretty
Okay.
significant. It's needed, but it's
So
pretty
this is giving the high school people 4% and a
5,
5K bonus.
5K,
It would be comparable with, it would keep the gap kind of like it
which is
is.
probably what, 1 point something percent?
Yeah, 5,000, well, yeah, I mean, it's comparable with what you're giving the K-8s, is what that is. That's why,
If we add this.
yeah, if you add it.
There's only 2 involved, right?
3, Jamie Gray is Asbury.
that's right.
So, so really, you're not giving, you're, I don't wanna say cheating, but you're not paying the high school principals as much as you're paying the middle school principals and elementary principals if you don't do this.
Correct.
Okay.
Are we spending the, 140,000 to get, I thought we weren't gonna do that. I'm completely,
Okay, let me say this again.
all right, explain.
If you don't give these high school principals $5,000, 3 of them, then you're paying the middle school principals more than you're paying the high school principals, even with the 4% raise.
Because making them 12 months is more than a 5,000 pay raise for these K-8 principals. You're adding a month and a half or a month of pay, so.
Okay.
All right? Anybody else? You want to vote?
No, I got, so you just said, just to make sure it's clear,
I'm sorry.
just to make sure I'm clear with what you just said. You
Yeah.
just said that some of the larger schools, they'll be making more than the high schools will
Yeah.
now.
That's what, yeah. If you don't give them, it's 5,000 on top of the 4 you just gave everybody else. Plus made everybody else 12-month employee.
Think of it, if the principal's making 60,000, which they make more than that K-8, that's 5,000 that you've just added to them.
Right.
You've just done the same thing to the K-8s, is I guess what, if
Okay.
they make 60,000, which
So-
they make more than that, but that's 5,000 a month. So you basically gave the K-8s probably let's just say $5,500 to $6,000 raise, plus you're gonna give them 4%. This is doing the same thing for the high school principals, is
Oh,
basically what it's
I
doing.
did not realize that we were giving, bring them to the 12-month, we were giving an extra besides the 4%.
Well, to be honest, I don't know if any of us realized that until Brad said
No,
it.
we did not. I voted for it and I
Well,
didn't
you were
realize
adding
that.
another month pay
Yeah.
to them,
Another
so
month's
that.
You added
Some
another
of them
month's
didn't
pay,
even want
so
it,
yeah.
too.
I didn't realize it
I'm
till.
gonna keep following Mr. Fleener's original logic on the 4%. I don't know about you
Stop,
guys.
Mitch. All right, let's vote, Jennifer.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
No,
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith,
No.
Mr. Irvin,
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
3 noes, 2 noes, sorry.
Okay, 2 CTEIAs.
That was another one of Annette's wanting to put 2 assistants in over Crockett and Boone for the ag department.
I'm gonna say
I'm
no
gonna
on
say
that.
take it off.
Yeah, take it off.
I agree.
Take them out. Make a motion.
Do we need to make a motion to take it
I
off?
think to be consistent.
Okay, make a
This
motion.
may be
Make a
quick-
motion, we remove that.
Second,
Second.
Mr. Riddle.
That's to remove it.
Yeah, roll call vote, Jennifer.
Ms. Dellinger,
Yes.
Mr. Fleener,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters.
Yes.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. Meredith,
Yes.
Mr. Irvin,
Aye.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Carries.
Okay, now this one's got me confused. Principal, 5K, again.
So,
That's been took
so
off.
that's been took off, there's no dollar amount.
Okay.
On the,
So you
yeah,
gotta
to that, see, there's no dollar amount
Okay,
there. That
so
was originally
assistant
that.
principal, 3K.
That was where you all voted to do something for the assistant principal since you were doing something for the principal.
I'll make that motion.
Does that have the same effect? Now, wait a minute. Well, you can make that motion. Anybody will second that? And I ain't got a question.
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, so when you do that, Brad, it says assistant principal's 3K. So does that mean every assistant principal in every school, high school and middle school, gets 3K plus the 4% we're just giving them?
If that's the way you all do it, yes, that's, because
So-
they're gonna get 4% now.
Right.
Yes. And that number includes fixed costs too.
So how does that compare to what we just did, principal and?
2,000 less.
You
I
understand
do
where I'm
think
coming?
that the difference would be, you know, when increasing the other principals to 12 months. And so the separation, and generally, even though an elementary principal's job is very difficult, you know, there's a lot more programs and moving parts to high school. So there's generally a separation between your high school principal's salary and your elementary and middle. So what you did in voting for the $5,000 increase to principals, you just kept them that separate, you know, them at that difference. With these assistant principals, you would be adding and to that group, that whole group. And there would not be, it doesn't appear to me there's any separation between grade levels at all, which is, you know,
Should there be?
is normal. It's not atypical, but I'm just saying, the difference between the action you took earlier when you made all principals at 12 months, you increased their salary, but then that would have put basically the high school principals in a position where they basically took a step backwards. In this case, you would be moving all assistant principals up, or you would be leaving them the same.
Because it has nothing to do with months.
Right.
At this point.
Exactly.
Okay. Do we have a motion? We got a motion and a second. Everybody clear? Roll call vote, Jennifer.
Mr. Fleener,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters.
Yes.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. Meredith,
Nope.
Mr. Irvin,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger,
No.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Carries. 2 noes.
Athletic supplements. I don't remember what that was or why that
That's where
was.
it's 15,000 apiece, and they do what they want with it as far as handing out supplements to each coach.
Okay. Do we got a motion for that? Take it off? Take it off.
No, you need to vote.
We need to vote. Mary Beth, make a motion.
I make a motion, we remove it.
Second.
All right. Let's vote, Jennifer.
Mr. Irvin,
Aye.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger,
Yes.
Mr. Fleener,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters,
Yes.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. Meredith,
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes. 2 high school math interventionists.
That says potential ESSER money. Is that something we can use for that?
We can use it, you know, with the understanding for the duration of the available funds. So if we used it for 3 years. If it was something needed to be continued, then it would then be a discussion in general purpose budget 3 years down the road. But it can be something that can be addressed with ESSER dollars.
I'd say we take it off since we can use it for, so you can use the extra money for that
Okay.
yourself.
Well, let me ask you a question on that, just to make sure I'm clear. I know high school math is hard to find teachers to teach it. If you pull somebody out and you tell them it's a 3-year assignment that we have the funding for it, you're gonna bring a teacher in to take that place.
Right.
If I was the interventionist, I'd be scared that I was gonna lose where I'm going in 3 years, because somebody's gonna be sitting in my spot, correct?
Dr. Keys said it was just, I think she even said 2 years. She
Yeah, I
planned
just
on
did,
going.
I did the full
You did the
duration.
full,
Yes,
okay. I
if
think-
that were the case, yes.
Yeah, so I think that anybody going in is going to know that
Prior to.
prior to, yeah,
And they would certainly need to be hired with that understanding.
right.
It's a lot like with federal dollars. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. It's a lot like with federal dollars, you hire them contingent upon the funding, and that would be the understanding. But then if, through attrition, if they're a, a teacher we certainly want to keep, then you would just essentially move them into that general purpose line, and then you would have to rehire somebody based on the temporary funding.
I'm just asking, thinking out loud right here, but still using ESSER dollars like we had the 304,000 ESSER dollars pay us back for an expense. Could we not do that, and that way we'd have this? I don't know, I just hate to see, you're gonna pull your 2 best math teachers probably for this, or I would assume so, to be the interventionist.
If you want them to have the maximum impact on students, that would be the direction we should go.
But I'd be scared knowing that was a temporary assignment, knowing, you know what I'm saying, in their mind.
I understand.
Somebody could be hired from outside the system, somebody new could be hired.
But if you have a.
If they're that good, we'll keep them.
Right, and that would be an understanding. They would go back into the classroom. I mean, any principal, if they had those, top teachers and they wanted to put them in a position where they're going to impact multiple teachers and multiple students, and at the end of that, they certainly would want them to be put back in the classroom. I think there's certainly a strong amount of job security for those individual teachers to take on that role, knowing they would have to go back into the classroom.
I'm just thinking of that individual, I know what we're saying, but for that individual, is that thought going across their mind? Okay.
Sure.
Well, Mr. Boyd, what we're talking about is adding two employees.
Yes,
right?
sir.
And I think we all believe that math interventionist is a really a high priority item. How do we assure that, and the question right now is, if we didn't have ESSER money coming, I think we'd say it'd be a slam dunk, let's add them. So I think what our thought process is how do we make sure that we use ESSER money for that and use general purpose school funds for, so how would you direct us here, I guess?
Well, I think with the need and looking at the data and expressed concern about the student outcomes in math, definitely needs a focus area. I certainly would prioritize that in the general purpose budget for those positions. And then it would be up to the team for us to make sure in other ways we make up the 150,000 either in cost savings or if it needs to be something that we can supplement with ESSER for the time period that we have ESSER dollars.
So I'll make a motion, we do this to high school math interventions.
Second.
Motion second.
Did you say to do it on ESSER or do it pay for it?
No, we just, what Mr. Boyd was saying is take it out of the general fund and the team try to pay it back.
Plus it gives you 2 years to decide if it's effective.
That is a point, yes, sir. But the point is we, making this a recurring expense through general purpose dollars for the positions, but that dollar amount, overall, we can look at ESSER dollars to offset that in other ways, at least for the time we have access to the ESSER dollars.
I think that's smart. Okay, let's vote, Jennifer.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Carries.
SPED 1 pre-K teacher state compliance. which I assume means we need one for compliance, state compliance, so we have a motion for that.
I make a motion that we
Sped,
sped
I
state
second.
compliance.
3K.
3K, yes.
All right, motion and second, any discussion on that?
Yeah, why is it in the new reoccurring instead of the must-haves?
That was just me that stuck it there per pending board approval.
So what about the 25,000, is that coming out of that too, because it's boxed?
Yeah, Dr. Myers said that if we get this teacher, she can repurpose, absorb an IA position. So, the net effect of that would be 70,000 less 25 on average.
So should we combine that, those two, or vote on them separately?
Those
I
were
think
meant
those
to go
two go
together.
together.
I think those
Okay.
are
Yeah.
together, because then you have a total of 50,000 would be the expense.
Okay.
All
Is
right,
that correct, Mr. Hale?
45.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I was seeing 75,000, so sorry about that. 75,000.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the math.
Jennifer?
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Day?
Yep. Yes.
Carries.
Okay. Sped 2 high school teachers.
I make a motion we hire 2 high school teachers
I
for sped.
second.
Anybody? Roll call vote, Jennifer.
Mr. Irvin? Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Carries.
One additional nurse at Boones Creek Elementary School.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Anybody?
I'd just like to ask Ms. Kelly what the need is there, just for Ms. Wagner. What is the need, just so we're all clear on it,
We
please?
have a float nurse that ideally is supposed to do education. Because of how busy the clinic is at Boones Creek, we're not able to utilize her like we would want to. So she's basically, they have 2 nurses working there right now, but we don't have a position that's still employed. Did that answer your question?
I think so.
All right, Jennifer?
Mr. Irvin? Mr. Hammond? Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr.
I
Meredith?
ain't gonna mention it.
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes or no?
Yes, up or down?
Yes.
Carries.
All right, just FYI, right now, we're at 4.5,
Little over.
little over 4.5, little over 4.5 million.
Okay.
We took off the 10 IAs. Should we, since it's not a number on here, do we need to do anything with that?
No, why? Let's go ahead. No.
Y'all
took off
voted
the
to take it
council.
off last time.
Okay. All right.
If it's already off, then, okay.
Okay. All right, 1 counselor at Midway.
Where'd you
Make a
get
motion
off
to
to?
that.
Well, we didn't make a motion. Did we?
Huh?
Did we vote on
I
that
thought
one?
we did.
We didn't,
Did
did
we
we?
vote on, no, that was discussion. If you want to formally act, I would
Yeah.
follow the process.
Can we get a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, we remove counselor at Midway.
Motion and a second. We already discussed it a while ago. Jennifer?
Mr. Irvin? Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Carries.
Accounting clerk pay scale modification.
Make a motion, we do that.
Second.
Anybody?
You say we take it out or leave it in?
Leave it in.
All right, Jennifer?
Mr. Irvin? Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Carries.
Help me with the John Deere Gators. I don't remember what we said a while ago.
They're non-recurring, well.
Yeah, they're non-reoccurring. I guess I got in a hurry and put it in the wrong box.
Oh,
That's-
well, thank you.
That's my fault.
Thank you, Brad.
Yes.
So we don't need to do anything on that, do we, Mr. Boyd, since it's not really supposed to be there?
Move it over to the next page.
I'll move it down.
You've deducted it.
That'll be moving to the other categories.
All right. Skyward Fast Track Online Hiring Module, $6,800 recurring annually. Is that what Ms. Mobley?
No, Mr. Boyd.
Mr. Boyd and Cindy Purcell.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was responsible for writing that. We
Okay.
currently, in the idea of attracting and retaining high-quality employees, we do paper applications. And we do have the capacity. We've implemented Skyward over the several years. We have not included this module for electronic applications and management of the hiring process. This would allow us to do that.
Okay.
For all certified, non-certified.
I will have to say, as a supervisor, I do appreciate this because we're the only system in the area that does not do online references, so.
You're making a motion.
I
Make a
will
motion.
make that
Second.
motion.
Okay, good. Got a motion and second. Any other discussion?
Who's taking that?
Whitney.
Whitney? Let's vote, Jennifer.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes. Dance coach stipend,
You went over the RN.
RN pay scale established a separate scale. Let's talk about that.
So that was brought to me by Ms. Wagner, and we don't have a pay scale that's reflective of an RN pay scale, especially comparing it to corporate. Maybe I'm overstepping, but if Ms. Wagner could probably speak better than I can about it, but this is something that we had just developed. I'll pull it up here and show you what it is in a moment, but certainly Ms. Wagner can speak better than I can towards that.
Brad and I worked to create a pay scale for RNs right now. The current pay scale that we have was specifically for RNs. We did change the names just to school nurse. We do have RNs that currently work in our system, and I'd like to get a pay scale that is based on education. Our certified staff have pay scales based on their level of education. I'd like to do the same thing for nurses. I would like to promote growth. I don't want them to get stagnant. When they do go to school and they do become, if they're not going to become an RN, they leave our district because there's not necessarily benefit when it comes to pay.
So is this 110,000 for
That's the impact right now.
how many?
That would be the RNs that we have now. They would go to this new scale. I want to say 6, if I remember correctly, or 7. So starting FY '22, they would go to the RN pay scale. That's the financial impact that it would immediately have.
So almost $16,000 raise.
That's probably
So how
about
did
right.
y'all develop a pay scale?
We looked at 7 area school systems. We took 2 of them, doesn't differentiate between LPs and RNs, which is what we currently do.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
We looked at 7 area school systems, 2 of which do not differentiate between LPNs and RNs, which is what we currently do. And with the other ones, we took the high and we took the low and removed that and we averaged the rest.
So you did that on, what'd you say, 5, so it ended up being 5 systems?
Ended up being what?
You said two
So
systems?
5, yes.
so I mean,
We
started
looked
with
at 7 and 5 is, we took the high and the low, removed those and just averaged the other ones.
Were they all county systems or county and city?
County and sitting.
Just wait a week at the bottom,
Excuse me?
are we at the bottom?
We didn't even start at their bottom.
I mean,
with
no.
RNs.
What are we telling right now, we're at?
Yes.
I make a motion, we keep this 110,000.
Okay.
Second.
Anybody?
I really want to do this, but there again, I really wish we'd have a separate meeting to talk about pay scales and where we at. I see the need.
comment. I mean, I won't comment, we'll give them a $16,000 raise plus a 4% on top of it. I mean, I won't, I feel like they need it, but Lord mercy, that's.
Well, let's compromise. Let's give them $5,000 apiece.
We may have to cut some of this stuff out anyway.
We're getting ready to.
So, I mean, we're just trimming it down, then we'll see where we're at for the next round.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it'd be good to get it right though, if we can.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody's got a feeling, I mean, I
know they're making
personally-
more money going somewhere else.
I love my buddy Chad over here, but I just don't think everybody makes the same money. That's why we all do different professions. But I don't mind to give them a raise. I just don't know if $15,000 today's the number, but.
And that's fixed cost and everything loaded, averaged in there. The net pays by not
Right.
that.
But it's still costing us
it's still-
$16,000.
That is the expense of the system,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
So, does anybody want to comment on that, or we're gonna move? Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to cut them high.
We're talking.
You have a motion and a second already on the table.
You want to amend that motion that's on the table?
That's my amendment. Or, let me retract my amendment. It's just, I mean, you may have enough votes, but not, we'll back it up.
So you wanted to cut it in half and then also include the 4%?
Everybody already got 4%.
Right.
Yeah, we're past that.
Okay. Well, I'm starting to figure out what he was
What,
doing.
repeat, who made the motion? I'm sorry.
Chad.
You made the original motion?
No.
I made the
David
original
did.
motion,
You
but
made
I'll
the original.
withdraw my motion, clean this up and keep it simple. and move on.
Okay. Does anybody want to withdraw that second?
I will.
Okay. You want to make a new motion?
I'll make the motion, we put 55,000 RN pays. How you gonna do it? Anyway, how do?
I'm gonna have to back into that, I'll have to, if you're giving me an amount to increase it, I'll have to just back into it. It'll take me a little while, but I can do it.
And if anything, he'll be below it because he can't go over it.
Correct.
Right? Per person. Once he breaks it down between 7 people, it might be
Do you do it on years?
below the 55, but,
Yeah, all that's considered.
right. Okay,
Did you have a second?
we did.
Now, is that a one-time? That's every year you're giving them that much of a
Well,
raise?
basically, this pay scale that you've got on the screen there, yeah, the pay scale that's on the screen, the net effect of that is the 110,000. So I'm gonna, if you're giving me an amount of 55,000, in essence, I'll go back to the old hourly rate that the scales are on now and take the difference, cut it in half for the increase. So that's just kind of,
But that's an annual increase.
that's a system expense.
All this is reoccurring.
This is
It's based
reoccurring
off
every
of
year.
where they are now on years of experience, and see, you'll notice on these scales, it's a different scale per school, because it depends on how many students are in the school, there's different scales. The busier you are, obviously, it's a higher scale. So I've taken the current RNs that we have employed now, looked at which scale they're on, the years of experience, and just translated that expense over to the new rate. And that's how, and added the fixed costs associated with that to the system. That's how you come up with 100, it was actually 109 and some change, so I rounded up to 110. So this was two scales here, the regular RN scale, and then there was a certified RN scale, which Ms. Wagner said other systems had. There's an extra certification evidently RNs can get. So that was, you could approve both scales, you could approve one scale, or you could do whatever you want. It's up to the board.
Okay, we got a motion, we got a second at $55,000 RN pay increase.
Mr. Irvin? Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
We're gonna come back.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Carries.
All right, now, dance coach stipend.
And right now, they make nothing, so, if we wanna go from there.
Now, this 1,200 is per
Year.
person?
One on each
Well,
side.
there's only gonna be two.
Right, but it says 1,200 on here, but is it 1,200 per person, so it's
Right.
2,400?
Right.
If there's two, yeah, that's correct.
2,400.
Well, right now, there's not one at Crockett, but there might.
Right now, there's.
But what we need to put in the budget,
Well, yeah, probably.
so we don't have to vote on it later? Does that make sense?
I make a motion, we make that 1,200 total, 600 each side.
Okay, I couldn't remember what it was.
600 now?
I think that's what it was originally.
'Cause they're
Wasn't
No,
it?
because Brad said that the cheerleading coach is making 1,800 and we decided to bring it to 1,000 or 1,200, so now you dropped it to 600?
No, I think your original motion a while
I said
ago was.
1,000
It was
earlier.
1,000.
Okay.
But I thought it was for two places.
Mhm.
I mean,
1,000 each
1,000 at each
1,000
place.
in each
Now
one.
you're going down.
I'm just going
Okay.
down because everything else we've added.
All right.
That's a start, that's the way I look at it.
So $1,200 total, 600 per school. You got a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Thought we did. Roll call vote, Jennifer.
Ms. Dellinger,
I want it, but I don't want it at that amount. Yes, yes.
Mr. Flinger,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters,
Yes.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. Meredith,
Yes.
Mr. Irvin,
Aye.
Mr. Hammond, Mr. Day,
Yes.
carried.
Now back to maintenance employee compensation. I want to say a 6% raise would be $103,584. And we did give raises to several others on top of the 4%.
What we add on number?
Thank you.
Just want to mention that. So I'm not saying, I mean, you know, if anybody wants to make a motion, it's fine, but just throwing it out there.
I make a motion not to. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, could we make a motion, this is 10 right now, and the additional 4, right?
Yeah, I'd like to give them 6 on
To make
top
it
of the
10.
4, to make it 10, which would cost us $103,584, which is less.
Cut it in half, give them 5, and make it 9.
I think so.
Make it 9.
Yeah,
Did you make that a motion?
yeah,
Sure.
Okay.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second. $5,000, 5% raise to maintenance. Roll call vote, Jennifer.
Mr. Irvin,
Aye.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger,
Yes.
Mr. Flinger,
Oh, man.
Mr. Masters,
Yes.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. Meredith,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes, and we want to point out that this is to hourly employees because the supervisors are on a different scale.
All supervisors, even the people that are, not director, but supervisors on up.
Yeah, there's a 12-month supervisor scale that all system supervisors are on, if they're an actual supervisor. But there's 3 under Philip in maintenance. You'll have the grounds, you'll have the shop, and then custodial.
Brad, can we get a total?
Right now, you budgeted to use $4,713,000 of fund balance.
And I'm gonna suggest we don't even look at non-reoccurring. If that's okay.
I'll blow it up.
I don't see any reason to, do you all?
Yes.
If I may, many of these items, through the process of aligning to the categories in ESER 3, we can address in ESER 3. These are one-time. You know, the exceptions will be, I think it's going to be, we'd have to get some input on the playground equipment. It may be allowed, but I would want some input from the department. But the rest of these items, I think, definitely could be addressed in ESER, with ESER funds.
Even the art supplies.
That one, I would want, again, some clarification, but there's a possibility here. But that to me, if that's intended to be a one-time like it's listed, And certainly that's something we need to explore, but, you know, it appears to me that the intent maybe is to make that a recurring expense.
It was supposed to be a 12, you know, it was supposed to be a recurring, but,
We can raise it up there.
well, would you allow me to throw something out there and see where it lay?
Please.
The art supplies, the 24,000, the health clinic dividers, at 12,000, and the EpiPen cabinet at 4,000. And the only reason them last two is just because there's not much there.
Is that EpiPen ever school?
Yes.
I thought, okay. And then what about, can you break that down, Mr. Fleener, which ones are more than one, and which ones, you know what I mean, like art supplies, is
Art
that,
supplies is gonna be reoccurring, or my wish for it was reoccurring.
is that per every school?
It's
That
based
amount of
on
money?
student enrollment, so it'd be above what they're getting 400 now, every school is. And this would give them, if they had 300 kids in that school, they'd get $900 more.
Okay, so do we have an amount on that?
It's 24,000.
Well, 24, it was figured at $3 per student.
Okay.
Roughly, we have a little over 8,000 students, so it might be 25,000, just depends on
Okay.
the enrollment fluctuation.
But that's just a amount of money.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the EpiPen cabinet's 4,000 times.
That's it, it's 4,000. Oh,
Was it?
yeah,
Oh, okay,
and the health clinic was 12,000 total.
okay, so that's all total numbers.
Yes, ma'am.
So you wanna take all those and add them to?
40,000.
That's okay, do that, isn't it? Move that up to reoccurring? Well, it ain't reoccurring.
I'm just saying add to the budget.
Okay.
If you would allow that motion,
All right.
40,000.
Whatever y'all wanna do, yeah.
onto
We got a second on that?
Second.
But
Yes.
some of this isn't reoccurring.
Wouldn't
though.
the-
Is this just one time?
He just wants to, yeah,
I'm just saying it to the budget.
As one-time
One-time.
expenses. I
Yeah.
got you.
I would say you're adding one-time expenses, but couldn't the ESSER, or you want to take it out of the ESSER money? like
Well,
the
I'm just
EpiPen?
saying, those three things, kinda like the, I'll find it here. in just a
if that,
second.
while you're looking,
The
Chad,
interventionist.
somebody explain to me, so we put this stuff in the budget, okay? And ESSER picks it up. When ESSER quits paying, we're gonna start paying, but we're gonna leave it in our budget, so we know that it's really there. Is that what we're doing,
I
I mean,
understand that's what Mr. Fleener's motion really is representing.
because there's other stuff we did the same deal, the same stuff, but we need to,
I'm
we'll just have a
saying-
little extra money left in the kitty if we don't spend, if ESSER picks it up.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's more of a designation. I mean, if it goes into the operational budget, then it's more or less reoccurring.
Mhm.
For the most part, unless there's some changes in the funding, of course, from the county level. But it's more about indicating that these funds are going into this year's budget, but the items won't be repurchased again, but the funds will still be there.
Right. Okay, so, before we do anything with that, because we're gonna add it to that amount, we need to decide, is there anything else that we need to, that anybody wants to,
I have one question.
okay?
On the additional program funding for CTE, that's potential ESSER. Would that be something that we would do the same with also, move it into the budget?
I'd be honored to add that.
That's what, I mean, it's the same.
With the 40 on top, that'd be 290.
290, but that's where you're adding that every year to beef up our CTE.
Tell me what I can afford, and tell me what we didn't spend that I got.
So we have a motion and second. So Mr. Fleener, you would have to amend your motion if
You wanna amend that to add that?
I would like to make amendment to his motion, please.
And what were you adding?
250 and
CTE 250. Now, we could, Mr. Boyd, we could potentially do some of that with ESSER money.
It's one of the specific categories in ESSER 3.
Would it be a good move to do that and move it into the budget as a reoccurring item?
It does leave that in as reoccurring, so in you know, the conversation when we get the clip with ESSER dollars ending, if that's still in there as an item, it continues.
So we probably should do that.
Is that including the IXL program too, the math?
That's an answer.
That's an answer.
That is ESSER, okay, good.
Okay, so, did we amend the motion just now?
We have an amendment to add the 250,000.
The total 290.
For CTE.
Oh,
So
gosh,
we need to
yeah.
vote on the amendment first.
Did we
Okay,
get a second?
We need a second on the amendment.
can I?
That's the amendment.
Chad,
Thank you,
Okay,
Chad.
so let's vote on the amendment, or motion as amended,
No, we're doing right now
just
just
the
the
amendment.
amendment.
just the
To
amendment.
add the 250.
I'm gonna have to have you read it again, I'm sorry.
Mr. Riddle made an amendment to Chad Fleener's motion to add 250,000 for CTE to the budget. So that's, right now, you're just voting on the 250 to be added.
For reoccurring extra 250 every year.
After this, for this year, if it's gonna be,
And it's added, what was the amendment that we're amending?
the 40,000 was the art and supplies and
24, 12,
Add
4.
that back in? Okay.
So you got all those numbers added, so we can give them a total.
You want a total now?
Yeah.
290 would be the total.
Well, I can add
Right
that
on
in my
250
head.
broken down.
5,009,721 from fund balance.
All right, 5 million,
We haven't voted yet.
you want me to tell you before you vote? You gonna vote?
Well, we have to add the 250 to the
Yeah,
amendment, and then we vote on the first.
yeah,
I'm adding on 40.
yeah, I was gonna give you the total, but okay, let's vote.
Mr. Irvin?
Aye.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
No.
Mr. Day?
Yes,
Carries. Now you're voting on the motion as amended.
290. Correct?
Total.
The 290 total, correct?
You ready, Mr. Day?
yes,
Mr. Irvin?
Aye.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
No.
Mr. Day?
yes.
Carries.
Now, what do you get? Be 1 point.
Oh.
33.
Huh?
5,009,000 first round.
$5,009,721 will be budgeted from fund balance.
And Brad, let me,
Balance the budget.
and comparing to last year, let me make sure I got this right. We're budgeting another $1.5 million of sales tax revenue. Correct?
Roughly, yeah,
Okay.
roughly.
Property tax staying about the same, but then we've got about $1 million decrease in BP
From budget,
from budget.
if you
Correct,
remember,
right,
yeah,
right,
from budget,
That's all-
because they
that's all-
cut it,
that's
yeah,
all- that's fine.
yeah,
That's all.
yeah, so.
So would it be appropriate, Mr. Chairman, to pass this budget and ask for the county commission to pay us $2 million more? So we'd just be taking 3 out of our fund balance and send to them?
Well, we already know they ain't going to. Would it be appropriate to say, back to what Mitch was just talking about, you're saying we're really looking at 3.5 million?
Well, I mean, you're already, Brad's already factored in $1.5 million increase in sales tax, which is additional revenue that the county is going to provide you. We had, I think we had this conversation last year, and then, of course, your BEP's dropping, so you've got to fill that with something else. So essentially, you're really looking at, $6.5 million of additional, $1.5 million in sales tax, and then the $5 million that you're using out of fund balance.
Well, we have 3.6 million we didn't spend that we thought we were spending last year.
Well, you actually got, I
We
mean, you
think.
actually got 10 million, whatever we put back this year, which will be
So we're really gonna have, so
7
maybe
million or
30,
two.
yeah, so
So, I
maybe
mean,
12 million.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of.
Don't use my buffer, good grief.
We're trying to move ahead, Brad.
Brad, you're slowing us down. We haven't considered Dietary's capital needs yet either. We have to do that before we leave.
Well, can you use that in capital projects?
Well, you're gonna add 500.
Very good point.
That's gonna
County
be
capital
600.
projects.
I mean,
That's a great, that's a great point, asking the county, of course, that's not up to me, but
Well, in my limited understanding, that would be where we would go. We have two options on those capital, we go to capital projects. Or we, if it's, meets the criteria, we look in the ESSER dollars.
Yeah.
Those are capital improvements, deferred maintenance items, specifically highlighted in the categories that the governor laid out for priorities. And so we have two options for addressing those capital improvements.
So would it be?
Outside of GP, I'm sorry.
No. So we're asking for $250,000 we're putting into CTE, not really called capital, but that is a capital improvement we're putting into that. And not to forget the dietary needs of $510,000 that needs to come out of the general fund. So would it be far-fetched to say we need to add that 510,771 to that, so that'd be $5.5 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the dietary capital needs would be coming out of there, correct?
no, not if. Like Mr. Boyd said, the dietary capital can be handled by county capital fund or ESSER. If either one of those two happens, then neither dietary nor general fund will have to fund that. You've set a minimum of $750,000 as the fund balance for dietary. We think they're going to come in, let's just say 1.3 million. That means they'll probably be able to absorb the extra 600,000 for FY22, all things being equal. But come FY23, definitely going to have to budget general fund transferring 500,000-600,000 to dietary. So that's with the county capital fund taking care of the dietary capital, or like Mr. Boyd said, ESSER being two options there.
So we don't want to add the 510,771 to the 5,009,000 in the general fund, correct?
No, right now.
I do not think that's necessary.
I don't think.
But we do have to add
Brad,
back the raise.
What was the initial budget we
It's
put
in there.
to the
Already in
commission
there?
last year?
Yeah.
How much, what was the deficit?
3.4 million,
much?
3.41 million.
And they said, no, the original one we sent to them, was that the first one we sent, or is that what they approved?
That's what
Remember?
they approved, yeah.
You know, we took a number there,
Oh,
and it was DOA.
well, that was like 5 million out of.
So where are we now? That's what I'm saying.
Well, we was asking the county to cover that. Now here, the way I'm understanding this, you're saying the fund balance is what you go budget.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think if we
Yeah.
keep moving this number north of 5 million, we're gonna be back here.
It makes me very nervous.
I think we need to stop right where we're at.
You may be back here anyway.
I don't like Brad to be nervous.
I don't, Brad just said, I have never took over this much money out of our fund balance. And I like having a fund balance. And Brad says he wants $6-7 million fund balance in hand.
That's what you'll have, ain't it?
Yeah, so, and I think I misquoted earlier when I said, you said what would we had 10 million in the audit, so if we really use 3.9, that'd drop us to 6. Right now, we're not tracking to use it, it's that, we're just not. So, now, and the other thing to keep in mind is if we're saying a $5 million balance, we do believe BEP's probably gonna come in and close some of that gap. I mean, that's it. I mean, so.
Brad, tell us how you feel. Are you comfortable with $5 million?
I'm never gonna be comfortable with 5 million, but I know the BEP's gonna cover a lot of this gap.
Yeah.
I mean, that I know. It could be 1 to 2 million, and as long as the tracking stays like it is, and we really don't dip into that fund balance this year, and we come out with at least 10, maybe we'll even gain, then it's doable. It is. It's doable this year.
Mr. Fleener?
Well, I'd still like to ask, for this first time we come out this year, and would it not be appropriate to ask him to put in $2 million for them to give us, and it'd be $3 million taken out of our fund balance? Is that?
How many pennies is that, Brad?
Well, a penny to the school system's about $170,000 to Washington County, because Johnson City gets a.
That's what I'm saying, if you're asking for the money, that's what it's gonna come from, because you've already got the sales tax in there. So you're gonna have to ask them for more property
I
tax
think it's a
spending.
waste of time, but I mean, I know what you're thinking, but
Well, I think everything we've got in here though.
we're just gonna come out and have another
It's
meeting.
not
and
unreasonable. I
Go back
mean,
again.
they're gonna say it is, but it's not outlandish stuff. It's constructive figures and numbers. So we're sure they're gonna say no, but they might not be as much no as we think they are. So we might get help. There's nothing in there that's crazy or silly that can't be supported.
Better, would you want it to be less than 2?
No, I'm just saying what we've got and we're sending, I mean, it's reasonable and reasonable uses of the funds and things for raises and things and to get our pay scales up and stuff. So I know the number's high, but it's still yet it's reasonable
We gotta
uses
start
of it.
somewhere.
And it's a good start, and I think these gentlemen can defend it a little bit. You know, they ask you questions, you can answer it. So, but we may not get a yes, but we might not get a full no.
Got a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, we send this 5.9721 to the county for approval and ask them to pay $2 million of it.
Do I
I
second?
second that motion.
And if they say no, we come back
Go
and
again.
use our fund balance if we have to.
Any more discussion? Let's vote it.
I mean, it'll be about, the only way they can put $2 million in here, Mike, is to add penny to the tax rate. I mean, unless somebody's got a better idea, I don't, man.
Well, it's only my third budget, but we're batting zero. I mean, every time we come back, we fund it all ourselves and we move
We
on.
will this one.
They're not gonna pay nothing, but I don't care.
All
what-
we do is ask.
Yeah, whatever y'all
That's
wanna
my
do.
fault.
We'll just have to come back and do it again. Good, let's vote.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
No.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
No.
Mr. Meredith?
No.
Mr. Day?
No.
Failed.
We failed.
Yeah.
What's the next thing?
What's the next one? Can we get another motion?
Now, well, I think, I don't know that you're gonna entertain any pennies. I know 12 pennies is DOA. I mean, that ain't gonna happen.
For $2 million is 12 pennies?
That's correct, because you split it with
Split
Johnson City.
Johnson City, yeah.
Would they go 6? Just asking, I mean.
I don't think it was a dime. Ain't yet. I don't know what they did when y'all was here last, but, I mean, I just think if you do it, I mean, they want a balanced budget, and they want us to pay for it. They say that every year. So, I mean, I think if we're serious about it, we just need to do it, pay it, and move on.
Well, we're asking for a $250,000 capital improvement for the CTE. So would it be far-fetched to ask for that back?
What, I don't understand the question.
We're asking for we're putting $250,000 in for CTE capital. I mean, well, I'll make a motion, we ask for we may ask for $5 million, but we ask the county for $1 million. Let's see if we gain them.
I'll second.
Let's go again, Jennifer.
For $1 million?
Yep.
Mr. Masters?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
No.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
No.
Mr. Meredith?
No.
Mr. Day?
No.
So just make a motion, we send the 5, and we'll pay for it.
Where's the dad at? We
This-
need to-
Boys, I just cannot support taking that much money out of our fund balance. I'm
You
sorry.
couldn't support taking 3 out.
We did all
I
right.
cannot.
I mean, we went over line item by
Chad
line
was only
item, that's
gonna
what
let
that
you
added up
take out
to.
3.
Yeah.
Because he's gonna add another 2 million of revenue.
I'm gonna gain a vote right here, I believe.
Let's go
We
again,
go
Chad.
5 billion.
Chad, can you
I
go
vote
again?
against it.
I made a motion. Somebody want a second?
Does anybody want to second Mike's motion, take the whole amount?
Where we are, I mean, where it is right now.
I'll second it. Let's go.
Let's go.
We're of little faith here.
Yeah.
I
Let's go
may just
again,
be
Jennifer.
young and dumb, I guess. I just never done it before. Get my feelings hurt.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
It doesn't bother me though.
Mr. Riddle?
You're on board.
Oh, yes, yes,
Mr.
absolutely.
Irvin?
No.
Ms. Dellinger? Mr. Fleener?
Drum roll.
Mr. Hammond?
No.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
So we're gonna cut this right now.
Yeah, we got
Before
to,
we approve
Wait
it.
on Ms. Dellinger.
We
We have
all
to.
have Ms. Dillon.
because he's got to have it by Monday,
Yeah.
right?
May 1st, we're supposed to submit it to the mayor's office.
No.
We're taking it
Taking
all,
it.
they're giving none, like
We're
usual.
just taking it and saying that we're balanced. We're taking 5 out of fund balance.
What is it now? Am I the
You're
deciding
deciding.
vote?
Yeah, you're the yes.
I'll say yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Well,
We're balanced.
We're balanced. Good job.
Joe, we're
So-
broke.
No, we're fine.
What about
Yeah.
dietary?
We have to go back to dietary now.
Okay.
Well, too, and keep in mind, if Brad gets another 2 million from BEP, then we're only 3 out.
Last year, we went over 3.4 and we used it, yeah. that was
Then we
right.
got that 3 that we didn't use this year.
I just want to
put back
mention that
in.
again. We didn't use, yeah.
So how much we really got, Brad?
make a motion, we take the dietary budget with 4% raise.
Second.
Be done with it.
Second.
Motion second, anybody? All right, let's vote Jennifer.
What?
Well, you see the numbers.
Dietary
Revenue
4% raise.
Everything 4%, just like we did for everybody else for dietary.
Dietary's be on board with
They were
us.
excluded to start.
He's a Nancy Pelosi.
I thought they were.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
No.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
I'm
Mr.
voting against the
Fleener?
budget,
Yes, ma'am.
period.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Carried.
What else? That's
We're gonna
it.
do it through capital, we're gonna wait and put it on top of the,
Yeah, this was to pass the 141, 142, 143.
Right.
not their capital. So what we're gonna do with their capital, we're gonna add it to the capital wish list.
We can, yeah, and then we'll go through the process either, through the capital improvement budget or through things that we can address through ESSER.
So I'll make a motion that we add the 551, is that right?
It's 625's on the budget, if it's dietary capital request.
The 5, what'd you say it was, 5 something, maybe?
51?
510,000?
Well, that was without the, it was 625 originally, because there's some extra architectural fees, plumbing, wiring, so we're rounding up, am I correct there, Caitlin, of 625?
Get that up there to
Yes.
include your fees and any
Yeah.
auxiliary wiring.
The 500,000 that you're referring to is just quotes that I got for equipment, estimates for equipment.
So what do you want on there?
So you need to do the 625, that would include plumbing, electrical, installation.
Exactly.
I don't have that, on yes, but yes,
It's on the dietary budget.
the 625.
625,000.
625,000 as per capital from the county.
Second.
For dietary improvement.
All right, anybody? All right, Jennifer.
And that was to request it from the county commission?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Irvin?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Fleener?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Meredith?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
It carries.
All right. Mr. Ward, anything else?
No, just to, on the $5 million gap, we do anticipate BEP funding to be adjusted. We hope that support from the legislature, it does the whole harmless and provides additional funds, not just to Washington County schools, but it'll address the issues across the state. So we hope they move in that direction. And then there were discussed increases on top of that, which could result in as Mr. Hill said, an additional, $1 to $2 million on the BP fund. So that would certainly lower that gap to around $3 million. We know the challenges of moving forward, but what the board has voted to commit to is fund balance. Using that to balance the budget. We know we will be coming back for further discussions to both adjust the change in revenue that we hope to see. We have budgeted, what's in there is the most conservative estimate that we do anticipate it will be more than that. So, we have done that because that's all we could do at this point without having the funds, the estimates to us from the State Department. So what I'm saying is it's a $5 million gap. We do anticipate that going down in a significant way. And then the discussion will be whatever remains. And then if the county commission does not provide additional funding, cannot provide additional funding, then the decision comes back to you, as you know. If we have a remaining gap, say if it's $3 million, then the commitment is to reinforce that we're going to use fund balance or not to completely cover all the costs. So, I mean, the $5 million is a huge dollar amount. But we also know that's going to adjust down based on the state revenue that we anticipate receiving more details very soon. But to meet the May 1st requirement, that's what we're doing. And I would say this is probably most appropriately labeled draft 1 of the general purpose budget for fiscal year 22.
With what money you say we're getting from the state, will that be reoccurring?
Yes, that's in the BEP formula. That will be in the BEP formula based on.
As long as we keep
the caveat is the
ADM.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then as enrollment, if it does continue to decrease, then of course there are adjustments that will have to be made, just like there would be in any school system. Yes, sir.
Oh. Jennifer, when is our next meeting?
May 4th, 5:30, that's the regular meeting.
Week from today.
Yes.
Yeah, and then we will be
Do the
retreat May 7th.
Correct.
Yeah.
They will not be a meeting that night, right?
Correct. We're gonna start
It
at
all
9.
starts Saturday morning at what time?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. Okay.
We'll go to y'all are done. How's that?
On the Saturday retreat?
Yeah.
Do we stay all night Saturday night?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Jason's taking us out to eat Saturday night.
And the joint meeting, everybody see that?
That's all the least I can do.
Where are we going to eat Saturday night?
I think it's 3
Appreciate you,
Jimmy's.
gentlemen. Thank you, Mr.
The
Those
Chairman.
count
joint
3.
meeting on the 13th.
Oh,
Did everybody see that?
Commission.
The boys?
yeah, has everybody got that? Joint meeting on the 13th? Good.
Joint meeting at the visitor center,
5:30.
5:30.
Confirmed.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all for being here. Meeting adjourned. I hate to go home now. This is the longest we've had in a while.
That's what I'm saying.
They've extended